taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach to get like the white man?
But he's just not a teacher. Black people now want to be taught. They don't want to be just spoken to. They want to learn something now. They want to clear the smoke.
So what is his purpose?
You have to ask him that. You can't ask me what his minutes of fire conference. You have to go to him and ask him that.
Peace, fam. What's good? What's happening? What's going on, man? It's your boy, Misinformation. If you're just now tuning in and you have not had the opportunity to bear witness to any of my live material, I want to say welcome. And y'all already know, man, it's almost Turkey Day. So, we got to talk about Turkey Day, but not too much time though, because it's definitely some information I want to get into. Digging into some of this history. Y'all already know how we do. Pen and paper gang, man. Y'all know y'all in the building. Tap in, pen and paper gang, pen and pad gang, pencil and pen, pencil, any type of writing apparatus, any kind of way to write down the information. Write down the information. It's me, M.O.I. Misinformation. You have not heard of me before, welcome. For those who have, welcome back. Appreciate y'all so much for tapping in with me in this random midday Tuesday cipher. For those who watch this a little bit later, definitely take notes. Y'all know I always say, do not believe a word I say. I'm not here to convince or persuade any of you. This is just information. I'm not going to fight with you to try to make you convinced. I don't know. Like I don't do that. Never have done that, and I will not start doing that. But what I will do, however, is share with you guys the information that I have prepared or that I have come across, and this is just food for thought. So please do your own research. That's why I ask you guys to take notes. If you find me an error or can add value to what I'm saying, hit me up. Let me know. Tap in with me. I am all about it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do this for you guys. I'm going to drop the link to join me directly in the bio. In the comment section. So I just dropped the link. If you guys want to come up here and join me right now, copy that link, drop it in your browser, follow the instructions, make sure you got a quiet space, quiet spot. You can join from your phone too. You don't have to have a laptop. You can join right from your phone. Come up here and join me right now and have the discussion. The line is open. In the building, Solo. What's going on? Solo, you changed your name, bro. I thought it was Solo 5000 or some shit like that. You don't change it. What's up, bro? Peace and light, man. True King 357. What's going on, Square? He's always in the building. You damn right. Pen and paper ready. And I don't know. I've been doing this for a few years now. Along with my boy Crum. Crum do a lot more than I do on here. But if you guys been taking notes for the past, I don't know, man, for the past 4 years. Some of y'all been down with us for fucking longer than 4 years. So you should have a nice size notebook of all types of information, I think, at this point. I could be wrong. But if you're a good note taker, then you got a good bit of information. So pen and pad gang in the building. Supreme Being, what's happening? What bro say? I feel sorry for people celebrating Thanksgiving. They're about to catch hell. Yeah, you got to expound on that, bro. What do you mean by that? I feel sorry for people that's into religion. They about to catch hell. Wait a minute, Supreme. Wait a minute, brother. You got to qualify what you're saying. I'm curious now. Bro said same food. Everybody cooked the same way they cooked our, I guess, ancestors. Chopped up body parts and put them in jars. Jive turkey. Okay, so I'm just gonna collect from Supreme that Supreme is not celebrating Thanksgiving, which is fine because I don't celebrate it either. But what I will do is definitely take the time out to get with the family who I haven't seen in all the year and break bread. People do tend to do the same traditional meals for Thanksgiving, macaroni and cheese and the dressing and the fried turkey, blah, blah, blah. Well, my family this year we're doing all seafood, like a seafood board. We're not even dealing with the macaroni and cheese and any of that shit at all this year. We're gonna go totally all seafood. It's a little bit more expensive, but everybody's shipping in, and we're gonna make it happen. So crab boil, we're doing grilled salmon. I'm sorry, stuffed salmon with crab meat. We're frying fish, and again, it's just a great time. And you know what's crazy? At least for my family, because I'm from Georgia, right? And it's been Sunday tradition forever for us to always hang out on Sundays and eat anyway. So this is just going to be like Sunday for us. This is not a special occasion of celebrating pilgrims and Indians or anything of the sort for Thanksgiving. This is us just breaking bread with each other, slapping five, playing some dominoes, playing some cards. We're not even drinking this year. No alcohol this year because I feel like us as a people, we find any excuse to drink. So um, I'm hosting this year, and there's gonna not gonna be any alcohol. Let me stop lying. It's gonna be some wine. We're gonna do wine, and that's it. No taking shots. No, none of that stuff that people love to do on these types of festive occasions. But we will take advantage of the opportunity to spend time with family and break bread, though. That definitely will happen. Um, so let's talk about this Thanksgiving real quick. And I know we typically get the cowboy. I'm not cowboys. I'm lying. We usually get the Indians and Pilgrim story. But did you know that October 3rd, 1789, Georgie Boy signed the first Thanksgiving proclamation of the newly constituted American Republic? He called upon American people to enjoy a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to observe by acknowledging with grateful hearts and many of the signal favors of Almighty God. This was the establishment of Thanksgiving right here. That's really what it was all about. Nothing to do with John Smith and Pocahontas. I'm sorry, Pocahontas. None of that stuff. Okay, it was just a time of peace because you got to think. And this was the official date. This was the official date for Thanksgiving as we celebrate and know it. What bro said we're supposed to be growing our own food and being thankful for the harvest we brought in. And yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. Um, if we grew our own food, that we would be thankful because this is time to harvest. This is harvest season, in case you guys didn't know. That's what the whole festive with the big bales of hay and any other produce that you can get out the ground, your squash, the collard greens. The first frost is coming or has already came already for winter. So it's time to plant, supplant, and take out your products. This is actually right. This is time to harvest your stuff right here. This is harvest season. But however, comma, on October 3rd, 1789, George Washington signed the first Thanksgiving proclamation of the newly constituted American Republic. All right? That should tell you a lot. The fact that they call it American Republic and not the United States of America. That should tell you a little bit right there of how that went down. But anyway, the early days of Thanksgiving, of giving thanks, it had been a long, difficult road for independence, and the in America was still reeling from the failed articles of Confederation and in the fight to adopt the new Constitution. Washington had seen the struggles firsthand, and he knew perhaps more than anyone that America was nothing less than a series of miracles. And he saw to it that the nation gave thanks. This was not the first celebration of Thanksgiving in America. The Pilgrims in 1621 celebration with the Wampanoag in Plymouth holds that honor. So, what I want to do really quick while we're on this subject, I'm going to do the same thing you guys are doing. All right. So if you got your notes, and if it's your first time joining me, like I'm not here to make a spectacle out of this. I'm not gonna be acting like a clown entertaining y'all. This is a classroom environment, so it's gonna be treated as such. If you used to people entertaining y'all and giving y'all the latest news, this ain't the channel for that. But we'll learn though. So, I don't. We're reading right now, and we got a good little ways to go. So be sure to pace yourself, pace your brain. It's going to be a lot to cover. But if you take really good notes, I promise you, it all makes sense. Give me a second because I have an outline also that I want to pull up. Memento, family. I had also created an outline for us to follow. I just want to make sure we stay on code. And this outline will also be available. If you guys wish for me to email you this outline once I find it, just let me know. 1 second. I almost got it. And we probably won't cover everything on this outline because it's a lot. But we will. What in the world? We will get into it. Sorry. I'm trying to save some stuff on my computer right quick. And it's acting crazy. Facebook, there it is. Save file. Let me just download it right quick. PDF. All right, there we go. And pull up this outline to show y'all proof that I really got an outline. Like I'm not joking. That's not it. Computer. Here we go. Here we go. So I'm going to share this outline on the screen right here. Again, if you guys want, definitely hit that like button. Definitely the like button. Thank you so much. This is the outline right here. If you guys want a copy of this outline, put my email up on the screen. Where is it at? Shoot me an email, subject outline, and I'll give you this outline. Let's take a look at this outline real quick. There's a lot of information on here, and we will not cover all this today. But at least if you want to, go through it at a later time. Mostly when I do my lives, I'll be coming from this right here. And the hyperlinks, there are also hyperlinks on here that you guys can go reference. So I have also included in-text citation for you guys. This is in-text citation. In the in-text citation, I point out a lot of the information, or you guys can go reference the information. Let me say it that way. You guys can definitely go cross-reference what I'm talking about. Again, don't take anything I say at face value. Okay, I want you guys to be able to do your own research and discover stuff for yourself. Okay, so I will be utilizing that outline, and we will be covering this outline. Sorry, I'm trying to get it. Here we go, right here. And as you guys can see, I'm starting with the imperial foundation, colonial powers, and the business of human beings, 1500 to 1700s. This is all timeline related, so you guys have a good timeline to go by. We're talking about Spain, Portugal involvement, France. I got speaking notes in here also. So this is me actually lecturing to you guys. These are my lecture notes if you guys want a copy of this. We talk about the joint stock and charter companies, the British East India Company, Virginia Company, the Royal African Company, the Dutch West India Company. This was all business, nothing personal. Black people, we make slavery personal, and to white people, it was just business. Speaking of again, and then we get into the early Black education and architect of the miseducation of the Negro. This is the first all-Black learning institution in Virginia. It's called the Williamsburg Bray School, and then you have what else? The Hampton Normal Agriculture Institute. These are the black, so-called black foundational colleges. The Native American students at Hampton University. Then get into the Howard Colored Orphanage Asylum in Weeksville, Brooklyn, founded by James Week. This right here is also a black man who founded the this community called Bedford Stuyvesant today. Howard Colored Orphan Asylum, Negro politicians in the South. This is also dealing with people like Hiram Revels and many others who pretty much ran the South, totally ran the South. But there's some stuff in here too that I want to show you guys when we get to it about Negro slave owners who were politicians and slave owners. So to me, it was kind of conflict of interest. You would think that because we had black politicians in office, and this is post Civil War, by the way, but slavery was still pretty much rampant. Um, with 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 black politicians owning slaves, such as Joseph Rainey's father, um, and many others who owned slaves, it made me think like, so you got black people in political office who are owning slaves. So they were not against slavery necessarily. And you would think that because there were so many black politicians at the end of the Civil War, that our plight would have been a little bit different. But I'm going to show you that there were different entities, meaning there were the freedmen who were the politicians, and then there were the enslaved Negroes who had no affiliation with the black politicians of the latter 1800s, even into the early 1900s. So there was no one black spokesperson. Um, how we get later in the 60s. Um, sorry, got an Amber Alert going off on my phone. Um, there were no like one black spokesperson in the early 1800s for black people the way you saw it in the 60s. So I guess part of this shit is for me to give you guys truths behind the history you were already taught, and hopefully open up your thinking a little bit more to show you guys like this the shit what was really going on. Miseducation again, school curriculum, Carter G. Wilson. So this is a this is a good bit of notes right here. It's 26 pages. I'm not going to go through all 26 pages, but if you want a copy of this, definitely shoot me an email and I'll send you the whole entire copy of this. I have an extended version of this also that I can send you as well if you guys want a copy of this. But this is kind of the outline we're going to be following today. I just wanted to put it up there. All right. Now, back to what I was saying about Turkey Day or Thanksgiving. There we go. Now, this is an article. Let me go ahead and cite my source so y'all can't say I'm making up shit. This is it's called fee.org. It's the Foundation for Economic Education. Here's the author right here, James R. Harrigan. And he goes on to pretty much write an article about what was happening in the earlier colonial periods that gave us the celebrations of Thanksgiving. Peace and love, brother. How you doing? Peace and light, brother. How you feeling? So this says right here, this was not the first celebration of Thanksgiving, meaning back when George Washington decided in 1789 to put out a proclamation to make it an official holiday. They're saying this is not the first time. The first time was in 1621. It was celebration with the Wampanoag in Plymouth holds that honor. If you do not know who the Wampanoag Indians are, I covered before the Wampanoag and the chief of the Wampanoag at that particular time. His name was Chief Metacom or King Philip. They called him King Philip. That was his Christian name, but he was a Wampanoag chieftain who was heavily involved with the earlier civil skirmishes or civil wars in the colonies with the British And they were allied. I think the Wampanoag were also allied. I want to say with France or somebody they were allied with. Many of the Indian tribes were allied with a lot of the European foreign powers, and that alliance allowed them not to be, I guess, conquered at that time. Eventually, they were conquered anyway. So, them aligning themselves with the British, French, and Spaniards, I guess, gave some type of status. But the Wampanoag Indians were the ones that kicked off what was known as the 100-year Indian War. It was more than 100 years, it's over 200 years of fighting, actually. Peace and love, Goddess. How you feeling today? Divine feminine energy is in the building. Hey, do me a favor, y'all. Hit that like button, man. Please hit that like button. Smash that like button. If you're over, are we on YouTube? You're on YouTube, hit that like button. Definitely share this shit, man. Let's get these numbers up a little bit. But what I want to point out to you guys, what was going on, because this paragraph is attributing 1621 celebration of Thanksgiving is connecting the pilgrims. Now, who were the pilgrims? The pilgrims were a group of religious individuals, mostly Puritans, in 1621. Now, let's go do some digging. Let's do some digging. I'll pull up my search engine here. All right. So here's what we do know. Let's write this down on our paper, okay? I'm going to take notes right along with you guys. Matter of fact, let me turn my camera on so y'all can see me. All right. So write down 1621 on your paper. So under 1621, I'm just gonna write tickers on. I'm gonna write 1621, and underneath 1621, I'm gonna write Pilgrim and Indians. So 1621, we got Pilgrims and Indians. What else do we have in 1621 in this area? Let's just see, because we're gonna look at the entirety of all the history and not just that part of it. Okay. All right. 1621. What else happened in 1621? I think the first slaves arrived to Hampton. What year did the first slaves arrive to Hampton, Virginia? 1619. We're close. So 1621, we got Pilgrims and Indians celebrate Thanksgiving. And I'm going to write 1619. Yeah, we're going backwards, but it's the same time frame. 1619, the first enslaved Africans arrived to Hampton, Virginia. The first enslaved Africans, and I'm just going to shorthand my shit by putting Hampton, Virginia. Hampton, VA. So the question is now, did those first 20 or so Africans, you think they were invited to dinner? To to Thanksgiving? And I'm not being funny. Maybe I am. But do you guys suspect that those 20 or odd Negroes were invited to participate in Thanksgiving? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna take a wild ass guess and say that those first 20 Africans did not get invited. Let's read about it real quick, because let's just read about it. I don't want to speculate. It says the first enslaved Africans arrived at Hampton, Virginia in 1619. This is not saying that this was the first group of Africans to arrive to the Americas. We know that the first group of Africans were 100 Africans. So let's write down 20 beside how many Africans came to the Americas in 1619. And again, this is how you talk to and decipher our brothers and sisters who were just so adamant about the whole entire slave trade narrative. Because I, for one, I don't teach it, I don't preach it, I don't even involve myself. There's not enough evidence to support this whole narrative that 20 million Negroes from Africa came to North America. Because my number one question to anybody that believes in the out of Africa theory, which you have your right to your opinion. This is totally your opinion. My plight is not to fight you on what you believe. Okay. But my question becomes, when did they get here? When did those Africans come to North America? I'm only concerned about North America because that's the continent that I live on, and it's the continent that you live on. So let's start with North America. When did they come to North America? Well, not the first. According to this, in 1619, how many Africans were brought to North America, according to this passage right here? Not 20,000, not 20 million, 20. Then in 1526, only 100 were brought to North America. Outside of those two sources, I haven't seen anything that says any number of Negroes out of Africa were brought to North America between 1619 and the early 1800s, because 1808, it was outlawed. You could not ship any more people from overseas to North America. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as we go along. All right, so it says they arrived at Port Comfort, which is now Fort Monroe, aboard the English privateer ship. I want you guys to write down privateer ship White Lion. Make a note of that. Privateer ship White Lion. That's going to be important. Privateer ship. So this privateer ship is contractual. So somebody owns a contract to this vessel. White Lion. So the privateer ship White Lion, this becomes important, fam, because when you talk to people about out of Africa and African slaves and this and the third, you're going to talk smartly about the names of the ships. Now, the USS, not the USS, I keep saying USS because I'm prior Navy, but this particular privateer ship called the White Lion was not an African ship, meaning it was not shipping bodies from Africa. It was already in the harbor or in the Gulf of Mexico when it discovered these 20 some odd individuals. Let's find out where these individuals came from, because these 20 Africans who came to Fort Comfort, Virginia, were not from the USS White Lion. Sorry, I keep saying it. Shit. USS means United States ship too, so I'm gonna defrag myself. These 20 or so Africans did not come off of the White Lion privateer ship, but they were hijacked from another ship. Let's learn about the other ship. Slave ship San Juan Batista. Yeah. See? Slow up a little bit. Control. This is called the San Juan Batista. Yes, write down the San Juan Batista. San Juan Batista. This is another transport ship. And I'm using the word ship very facetiously because these were not ships. These were fucking schooners or little vessels, cargo vessels. San Juan Batista. Now, guys, we've been on here for about 29 minutes. Within the first 18 minutes or so, I've given you names. I gave you dates, not people yet. We'll talk about people in a second. Names, location, date and location. When it happened and where it happened, okay? As you begin to talk to people, not debating people, but having a conversation, always start the conversation with when and where. Okay. So when and where. So as you're having the conversation with these individuals, guess what you're going to say? In 1619, the San Juan Batista, which was a Portuguese slave ship that transported the first documented enslaved Africans to the English colonies in North America in 1619, the ship was sailing to Veracruz, Mexico. So these individual Africans were being taken to Veracruz, Mexico, not to North America. This is Central America, last time I checked. Okay. So Africans were being taken to Mexico in 1619 and just so happened got hijacked. We're going to see in a second. They were hijacked by another privateer ship, the White Lion. We got it? Bro said, what's my cash app? Good question. Let me put it up here. You guys want to make a donation because we're about to teach today. We are teaching today. We are fucking teaching today. All right. Going into 2026, this is how we're going to teach. I'm not on get on TikTok and debate with nobody no more. If you want to learn all wise right knowledge, fuck with me. Fuck with me. Please come over here and get this work. Okay. Dodge the hijack. I love when bro say this shit. Dodge the hijack, because it is some hijacking people out there. Anyway, let's move on. So now, what do we know so far? So far, we know that in 1619, 20 of some odd Africans were brought to Fort Comfort, Virginia, aka Hampton, Virginia. We're not going to leave Hampton, Virginia. Matter of fact, on your notes, go back by 1619, and you want to circle Hampton, Virginia. Circle, highlight, asterisk, Hampton, Virginia. We have a location and we have a time frame. We are doing investigative work over here. This is called investigative history. Okay, investigative history, where it happened and when it happened. We know 1619 it happened because we got to go back to 1621. Remember, which is 3 years after 1619. 2 years, sorry. 2 years after 1619. We're going to talk about the Pilgrims and the Indians' first Thanksgiving. But not just any pilgrims, not just any Indians. We're going to learn who these pilgrims were, which were the Puritans, the Quakers, the Brownists, the Calvinists. We're going to learn who they were and where they come from. They came to North America on a pilgrimage. Okay. Shouts out to Malcolm X. Malcolm X said, "We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us." We're going to see what he was talking about for 1621. But for right now, we're in 1619 for right now. 1619, talking about 20 odd Africans were hijacked from another ship. The San Juan Batista was a Portuguese slave ship. So now, beside the San Juan Batista, I want you guys to write down Portuguese slave ship. Portuguese slave ship. Because we can't just keep saying white people brought Negroes to America. Let's start finding out who they were. If you guys are serious about the information. Portuguese slave ship. I'm taking notes with you guys too, okay? Circle Portuguese slave ship. Circle Portuguese slave ship. So now we know who's involved at this point. We know that there's a privateer ship. We haven't found out who that is yet, but we know that there's a first ship called the San Juan Batista who was owned by the Portuguese. Why are the Portuguese so important in this conversation, I wonder? Well, we're going to see in a second. We're going to see who was supplying the Portuguese with these bodies. So now that you circled Portuguese slave ship, write that down. Go right underneath Portuguese slave ship, so on your paperwork, and write the word who. Who. W-H-O. Who. Because as of right now, we don't know who gave those bodies to Portugal to put on those slave ships. We're going to find out, though. I guarantee you by the end of this conversation, you're going to know who put them Negroes on those ships to come to Mexico. Did you even know that Black Africans were being shipped to Mexico? Did you know that? In the 1620s? Right, because there was nothing for them to do in the North American colonies yet, because the North American colonies had not been established yet. Spain had set up the southeastern district of North America. France had went up to Canada, but the eastern seaboard, as we know today, from New York, New Amsterdam, Chicago, not Chicago, New York, New Amsterdam, New Jersey, the Carolinas down to Georgia, those were not set up yet. Remember, we're only in 1619, guys. We haven't had the Revolutionary War yet. We haven't even got that far yet. Okay. 1619, where we start in history at. Let's read on about the San Juan Batista real quick. So I'll give you guys two ships. The ship was sailing to Veracruz, Mexico, when it was attacked by an English privateer ship. So now what this is telling us that the British and the Portuguese are not getting along so well, because the English privateer ship, which is financed, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the English privateers financed the first person to receive a government contract from Britain was John Hawkins. We're going to come back to this. Watch this. And we're just cross-referencing history right now. Give me 1 second to click off the screen. We're going to come right back to that. Boom, 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 boom. We're talking about privateers. John Hawkins, the first privateer hired by the Queen. All right, let's read about this guy real quick. And then we can go back to that. John Hawkins, it said, was not the first privateer hired by the Queen, but he was a prominent English naval commander who received a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I for voyages that were part privateer and also part slave trade. So now see how we about to unravel this shit real quick. He's also known for his significant contribution to the English Navy, including his role to defeat the Spanish Armada. Now, the defeating of the Spanish Armada was the biggest naval command of their time, okay, until they were defeated by the English. And John Hawkins was a pivotal admiral or individual in that particular war. I'll also want to note, just for the audience, now we won't go back, we can go backwards into 1489 and 1470 and 14 whatever the fuck, and show you how those ships were owned by Moors out of Spain. Y'all want to do that? Because we're talking about these privateer ships, and now we see that England, or Britain as it was called at that point in time, they got their hands on some ships too, because they defeated the Spanish Armada. We don't have time to go into the Spanish Armada. Just know that Spain had it going on. Okay, so John Hawkins, a privateer. So at this point, class, because you guys are my class right now, I'm having fun. You guys having fun? I'm having fun. Who you got up there? Right, Queen in Nzinga. Queen Nzinga was responsible for that. John Hawkins was the first privateer, not the first privateer, but one of the prominent privateers. So we have John Hawkins. We have a name. We have John Hawkins, privateer. We know that the San Juan Batista was a privateer ship that was hijacked by the White Lion, and the White Lion that hijacked the Africans from the San Juan Batista brought those 20 individuals to Fort Comfort, Virginia, what is now called Hampton, Virginia. So if you guys are having this conversation with people, you should be reciting the dates, the names, the people. This is how you stop individuals who just talking barbershop talk. They're just talking. You know, slaves were brought from Africa over here, and they're not telling you what I'm telling you right now. I want you guys to be trained to have these sophisticated and intelligent conversations as a scholar. Okay? Not to just be reciting some shit. At this point, we're about, I don't know, 27 minutes into the conversation, and I've given you a lot of information already, and we haven't even gotten to the part we're going to be talking about today. All right, let's move on. It says the royal charter in 1564, Queen Elizabeth I invested in Hawkins by leasing him her ship, the Jesus of Lebec. It's called the good ship Jesus, by the way, to support his third major voyage, which involved privateering and transatlantic slave trade. Privateering and slave trade, Hawkins and his crew raided Spanish ships, Portuguese and Spanish ships. You see how I said Spanish ships right here? And 1564. Let's keep going. Along the way, it captured African slaves to sell to the Caribbean and South America. Privateer slave trading, Hawkins and his crew raided Spanish ships along the way and captured African slaves to sell in the Caribbean and South America, not North America. If Africans were brought to North America in the 1600s, what were they doing? What were they doing? As a matter of fact, go back on your notes to 1619, where you should have wrote down the first Africans brought to Hampton, Virginia in 1619 in your notes. Somewhere in that area, write what were they doing? What were they doing? Investigative history. What were these Africans doing in 1619 when they got to Fort Comfort, Virginia? What were they doing? What do you think they was doing when they got there? I want you guys to formulate in your heads what you think they were doing. Put it in the comments. We have 20 or so odd Africans who were brought to Fort Comfort, Virginia in 1619, who were hijacked by privateers. We're learning about privateers right now. Now, these privateers are going to go on to be called pirates a little bit later. The privateers, the buccaneers, they call them something else too. I forgot what they call them, but it's a couple of different names for them. The model of what they're doing, later the U.S. Navy will adopt the skull and crossbones to replicate these privateerings or these activities upon what's called maritime operations. This is at a time where all nations on the planet who had vessels were doing something called mercantilism. Mercantilism is capitalism up on the water. Yes, this is where you get the maritime law established and all that kind of story. Hear ye, so on and so forth. John Hawkins later became a key figure in the English Navy, serving as treasurer of the Navy and played a crucial role as vice admiral in the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, of which he was knighted. 1588, the Spanish Armada falls. The Spanish Armada was always around during the time of the Moors. That's how they got the ships. Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand under the House of Castile and the House of Aragon under the 1489-1492 Intercatericavina confiscated all those ships from the Moors, thus giving Spain the largest sea power in the world at that time until they were defeated by the British. And the only way the British defeated them because it was a hurricane or a storm or something like that that gave them an advantage. All right. So now, I just want to give you guys some insight of what a privateer was. John Hawkins was a privateer. John Hawkins was a merchant, a sea captain, a ship owner, and one of the first English people to be involved in the transatlantic slave trade. He was one of the first English people to be involved in the transatlantic slave trade. John Hawkins. I want to give you guys some background to what a privateer was, okay? All right, let's go back to this real quick. Now, let's read this again. The San Juan Batista was a Portuguese slave ship. Portugal's involved, and we know that who else is involved? Britain's involved, right? So now we can stop saying white people. We can identify countries. We can also put a name to the country. We can also a person's name to one of the countries. We can also put dates and timelines to this information. The privateer ship basically attacked the San Juan Batista. The voyage events in May 1619. The San Juan Batista, also spelled Yoho Batista, San Juan Batista, departed from Leduan, a Portuguese port in Angola. Write that down. Landa. It was a Portuguese. Now, why would the Portuguese have a port in Angola? Why would the Portuguese have a port in Angola? Let's continue to read. With the estimate of 350 kidnapped Africans on board. So we have another number. We have 350 Africans. These numbers are important, family. Of the 350, only 20 was brought to Fort Comfort. So we have 350 Africans. Write that down. Not 350,000, not 350 million Africans, 350 people. With the estimate 350 kidnapped Africans on board, the captives were Kambudu-speaking people from the kingdom of Ndongo. So not only do we have Angola, we know that they're from the kingdom of Ndongo. And from here, the sister had already stated earlier in the comments, we know that the queen of that empire of Ndongo was Queen Nzinga. So Queen Nzinga was responsible for trading with the Portuguese. Queen Nzinga was shipping out a little bit over 250,000 Africans, or giving a little bit over 250,000 captive Africans over to the Portuguese. And the reason she was partnering with the Portuguese was to keep the Dutch off her ass, pretty much. Okay. So yeah, we've learned a lot so far. True King, thank you, bro. So True King is right. So 470 Africans so far. In fact, True King, we can put from 1621, or fuck it, let's just say 1619. 1619. So far from 1619, we've counted 470 Africans who were documentally brought to North America. Okay, we're fine. We're doing the Carfax report. All right. But let's read on, True King. Hold on. You got to go check your math. The journey across the Atlantic was so brutal, approximately 150 of them died from disease. So let's take your 470, True King, and minus 150. That gives us about 320, I think, right? So only 320. 320. And out of the 320, only 300. Let's keep going. In the Bay of Campeche, nearing the intended destination of Veracruz, Mexico, the San Juan Bautista was attacked by two English privateer ships, two of them. One was called the White Lion, and the other one called the Treasure. So now we identified two British ships who attacked this slave ship. The privateers stole approximately 50 to 60 of the surviving Africans. So, True King, I'm gonna leave this math up to you, brother. Do the math at this point. So we know you said 470, 150 died, only about 50 to 60 were taken away from them. So, True King, work that math problem out for us, please, and post it in the comments. See what you got. The White Lion arrived at Port Comfort, present-day Hampton, Virginia, in the late August of 1619, and they traded 20 of them for food and supplies. A few days later, the treasurer arrived and traded another 2 or 3 Africans. These individuals were the first recorded Africans in the Middle English America, marking a pivotal point in American history that led to the institutionalized of institution, damn, into institutionalization, pardon me, of race-based slavery. Following destination, the remaining 123 or more counted were sold to Jamaica. Enslaved Africans to the San Juan Bautista were eventually taken to Veracruz, Mexico, and they were forced to work in silver mines. So at least we know what they were doing in Mexico, but it doesn't say what they were doing in North America. They were going to do that. Okay. True King put 320. Yes, 320 for sure. But see how the numbers keep going? Say the remaining 123, 260. Come on, bro. Quick math. Let's go. 260 or so. There we go. So only 260 or so Africans remained. This is the final destination. The remaining 123 were taken eventually to Veracruz, Mexico, where they was forced to work in silver mines, not cotton fields, not tobacco fields, not rice, not being lynched, not being whipped, none of that shit. 1600s. I'm also gonna attempt to show you guys the paradoxical information that the way we was taught slavery happened had nothing to do with the earlier 16 to 1700s. This stuff happened in the 1800s. Is more closely time-wise than we think it is. It wasn't 200 years ago. It was very, very recent that our people were being treated the way you see in the movies of Django and 12 Years a Slave. Like, this is more recent than they're making it seem. They're mirroring the African slave trade and making you think that this your plot, and that's not your story. That's our cousin's story, but we have our own story of slavery as it relates to how it was treated in North America. But I digress. So this is what happened. Now let's tie it up so we can move on real quick. Let's go back. 1619. What was we on? It was on. Oh, the George Washington thing. Yeah, sorry. I almost lost my train of thought just then. It was on the George Washington thing. I don't need that up there. There we go. Let me flip my screen back around. Hold on. Share screen. Oh, there we go. So now I'm gonna go back and start digging in this article a little bit more. 1621. Let's go back to our sheet of paper. I just gave you guys what was happening leading up to 1621. It's a lot, wasn't it? There's a lot of shit, right? It's cool, right? A lot of stuff. The first celebration of Thanksgiving in America was the Pilgrims of 1621. Celebration with the Wampanoag and Plymouth holds that honor. Nor was this Washington's first Thanksgiving. He proclaimed Thanksgiving in December of 1777. Excuse me, in the wake of the Continental Army's victory over the British at Saratoga. This was thought the first Thanksgiving of the American public, and was the first national Thanksgiving. So the first national Thanksgiving Day was in 1777, although they attribute the 1619 festival or feast between the Indians and the Pilgrims. And we don't have time to get into who those particular pilgrims were, but trust me, they were religious movement. These were not the attackers that came a little bit later. They always sent in the clergy first to subdue the people through religion, and then the conquistadors of Britain, because they have mercenaries also, who came a little bit later and end up terrorizing many of the Indians later. It was the first national Thanksgiving. Washington went on to declare another observation in 1795 to his successor, John Adams, followed suit in 1798 and 1799. But it's America's position in the world was steadily established, and debate on separation of church and state began to take shape. Thanksgiving was all but forgotten in the national stage. A condition of peace and plenty resulted not in a grateful America, but in a complex one. The War of 1812, though reminded Americans to their collective place in the world, was more tenacious than they had realized. And at the close of the war, 1814, James Madison proclaimed a day of public humiliation and fasting of prayer to Almighty God for the safety and welfare of the United States. Madison declared another Thanksgiving in 1815, and then nearly half a century passed. The birth of Thanksgiving, as we know it, was established in 1863. I'm sorry, I'm lying. Once again, the claim that National Thanksgiving Reserve fell by the wayside. The founding generation, America's founding generation, had passed away, and with them, the possibilities of a nation gratefulness seemed to pass away as well, just as the War of 1812 had reminded the nation of its precarious though the Civil War shattered the illusion of Americans' harmony. Abraham Lincoln had warned the nation in 1858 that a house divided against itself cannot stand. But by 1863, the divided country was indeed in danger of falling. Yeah, I won't go into all that right there, but you basically see that the establishment of Thanksgiving came from 1621. Supposedly, this was not an established day because they don't know when. 1621. And there's variable stories about what happened between the Indians and the Pilgrims. We don't have time to go in that rabbit hole. Some say it was a feast. Some say the Indians were actually feasting on the Pilgrims. Some say that the Indians actually saved the Pilgrims by feeding them food or offer some type of welfare support to the white folks at that point in time. But hey, I wasn't there. Who knows, right? So yeah, I just want to kind of give you guys a little quick peek into Thanksgiving since Turkey Day is coming up. Now, let's attempt to get into this outline. Y'all thought that was the beginning of the lecture? It definitely wasn't. Thank y'all for hanging in there, though. I know it was a lot of shit, but like that's kind of my goal, fam. Is to I ain't got time to sit here and entertain y'all with the oohs and the ahs and the sound effects. I'll leave it for other podcasters. But for me, I want you guys to really learn. So a lot of this stuff will be repetitive. A lot of this stuff will be elongated into more depth information. But all in all, I really think you need to do it. Everyone talking about the business. Mentioned some, guess what? Black slave owners who were not black slave owners, they were also politicians, which seems like a pretty conundrum. How can you be a politician and be for slavery? It does not make sense to me until I start looking at it. So take a look at some numbers real quick, because again, we have to know when and where. When and where. We're going to start a whole nother topic at this point. The first page or the same page, side note, everything. So, fast forward to 1800s, okay? So you guys can do the time. Learn about how many people. It says in 1770 there are estimated 347,378 Black Negro people living in 5 southern colonies, were comprised 31% of the population. Now we're 14% of the population total. Anyway, that's important. So 1770, and this is not the census, by the way. First U.S. census is not until 1779. This is not. I don't know how they got this count. You can look into how they got the count, but we'll just read about it, okay? So your paper put 1770, 347,378 black folks. And we know that black is not, that's what we call them for the sake of conversation. So that's 1770. Somehow, how many years is that? 100 and years? Let's just say 60, yeah, 150 years. 150, this is a question to you guys. You guys can answer in the chat. Out of 150 years, do you guys think that those 20 Africans from Hampton, Virginia, was able to make this number right here? Of the 20 Africans who were brought to North America in 1620, 100 years before 1770, I'm counting right, 150 years, sorry, 150 years before, do you guys think in 150 years, those 20 Africans spawned over 250,000 Negroes? And they're not even giving the breakdown of age. You probably can get into how many were a certain age, which would then show you how many generations you can get in 150 years. Let's just ask Google real quick. Let me go back to that. In 150 years, how many generations can you get? 5 to 6 generations. 5 to 6 generations. It says, based on the average generational span, 25 to 30 years. This calculates about 50 years by the average generation. So 150 divided by 25 is 6, and 150 divided by 30 is 5. So if everybody lived to at least be 25 years old from 1620 to 1770, which is 150 years, if everybody lived at least to be 25 years old, which is really young, then that's only 6 generations. So my question still. There we go. So as I was saying, my question still stands. In 150 years, do you guys think that those 20 Africans that we saw came in 1620? You think they were able to spawn 347,000 black people? Definitely not. So even as I'm showing you guys the light information about American history, you see how the fact that they say Africans were brought to North America and you guys are part of that generational Africans. You see how this shit don't make sense? And we haven't even did no digging yet, because in 1770 there wasn't any census yet. They haven't took a collective census yet, and even the census evolved over time. So in 1770 there were no white people, there were no black people, there were no that shit was not even invented yet. That happens in 1779. Now 9 years after this, they're going to start coming up with Negroid and Caucasian, and that's going to be by Johann Blumenbacher, a German anthropologist, is going to give that information that they will later begin to utilize. But in 1779, the first U.S. census happens, to where they begin to track how many of who, right? And a lot of those Indians on the East Coast, because this is East Coast information, we haven't made it out west yet. We'll talk about out west a different day. When we go past 1840, then we'll go out west and talk about the Teepee Indians. But as of right now, we're only talking about the 5 southern colonies. You see what I say right there? The 5 southern colonies. The 5 southern colonies. There were 347,000 black people. 1620, they only brought 20. Let's just go with the number True King gave us, 260. And out of 260, 130 was taken to Veracruz and the other was given to the Caribbean. So you only have 30 Africans who were brought to Virginia. And you think that they're responsible for 347,000 black people? No fucking way. Which further unravels your out of Africa theory on a basic level. The number accounted for in the vast majority of the total black population across 13 American colonies, which was around 397,000 people at the time. The total population of the American colonies was 217 million. So out of 217 million, it says 397,924 of those people were supposedly black folks. All right. Slavery was deeply entrenched in the southern colonies, economics, partially with the rise of labor-intensive crop like tobacco and rice. The concentration of black population was the highest in the South. In South Carolina, black people made up 70% of the population by the mid-18th century. In Virginia, they comprised over 40% of the population. So on your paper, write down South Carolina, because this is gonna make sense later when we talk about the prostrate states of South Carolina and all those black politicians who were running the South. It's gonna make sense now. South Carolina, 70% population black. It says by the mid 18th century. That's 1700s, by the way. Okay, just put mid 1700s. So South Carolina had a population of 70% black people. Virginia had 40% of black folks, mid 1700s. Okay, we can move on. I just want you guys to have the data to quantify and qualify your conversation when you talk to people about what was going on in America with these supposed Negroes or slaves. Hold on. It's the same thing. Hold on. I think I'm going to go into something else before I go there. You know what? We ain't got to guess. Let's just go into our outline. Let's go into our outline right quick. So we're still in the mid 1700s. Hold on, got a question in the chat. What if North America and Moors were never slaves but under persecution and subjugation, so we were prisoners of war? What if North America and Moors were never slaves but under persecution and subjugation, so we are prisoners of war? That statement works because the Moors were expelled from Spain, so they were under persecution, and they were under a different subjugation or jurisdiction. So prisoners of war, that also makes sense. So your statement makes sense. You don't have to say what if. That's the actual fact. And I don't have all the time to get into showing you how that's a fact, but you can start with the last stronghold of the Moors when that fell. King Montezuma, Andalus, which is called Spain. Just start with that, and then so they were subjugated. They were subjects under another jurisdiction, and they were persecuted. So that makes sense. I will agree. So you don't have to say what if. You can say it with certainty, because that's what happened. Early Black education, the architect of mission education, 1760 to early 1900s. If you guys want to copy this outline, be sure to shoot me an email. Let me know. So let's talk about the first all black school in America. The first all black school in America. I would say that you guys know when it was, but the answer's on the screen. That's pretty obvious. Let's talk about the first all black school. And the reason it becomes important because you guys remember hearing about anti-literacy laws and black folk couldn't read, and they do everything to make us as a collective people sound stupid, ignorant, just we couldn't read, we couldn't write. All we could do was just work. It was just laboring forces. Well, today I'm going to show you the opposite side of that argument so you guys can stop adding to the argument and propose a different angle of the argument by asking whoever you're arguing with or debating with or talking to, what if black people could read and write back then? What if we could read and write? What if we were highly educated, even during the time of the colonies, going into the 1800s of slavery? What if we could read and write? What if we were just really like that? What if we were the politicians holding down the fort after the Civil War? What if we were the majority of the votes belonged to us in the South? And the reason we get stuff like the 14th and 13th Amendment was due to our enslaved brethren who did not have the right to vote, because freedmen had the right to vote. Freedmen were landowners, and that was the only requirement to vote, that you had to be a landowner. And a lot of our black people own land. A lot of our black people also own other black people and made them work for them. Blase, blase. So when they paint the picture of slavery and separation in America, they make it like it's a white and black thing. But I'm going to talk about only black folks who participated in slavery. But before I do that, let's go answer our question real quick. Remember, we had our question. We had a couple questions. I'm sorry, about 1619. The first question we had 1619 was, what were they doing? And the next question, I think we answered the question already about the Portuguese slave ship. Who? We talked about Queen Nzinga. Queen Nzinga was the who to that. I want to make sure I give you guys all the answers real quick. Wait a minute. Somebody had an issue with me. Let's get to it. I only have one issue with you, M.O.I. What's your issue, truth be told? What is your issue? Talk to me. Talk black to me. I'm gonna also once again, I'm gonna drop the live link in the chat. If you want to join me live, the link is right there in the chat. Click the link and join me live up here. But truth be told, talk to me. Put it in the chat. What is the one? It better be one issue. Don't make it two or three. What is your one issue with me? Please, I want to hear this. I am excited to hear this. And that's all it was. It was business. It was business. And here's what I tell people, George. I tell people that if slaves at that particular time had representation, HR or EO office, you would have never heard about slavery, because it was just unfair pay for wages for work. That's really what slavery was about. I don't come on. Man, let me tell you something, man. I be working like a Mississippi mule, man. And my just know my intentions are there. My intentions are there. And for those of you who have the same complaint, which is a valid complaint, I appreciate you, sis, for keeping me honest. For those who have that valid complaint, do me a favor, sis. If you're not already following me over on TikTok, because I do a lot of posting on TikTok. I do a lot of posting on TikTok. So if you have not already, I do more posting on TikTok than going live, because I feel like it's a quicker, easier fix for me to hop on TikTok, drop some cool shit on TikTok, and then hop the fuck off. You know what I'm saying? But I will do my best on going live more often on here. You know what I'm saying? You guys give me some subjects to talk about too. These are all new posts currently on my TikTok that I just made. That second row to have highlighted right there, talking about it's a cool documentary right here too. It's a cool documentary right here, talking about how blacks were actually educated from the 1700s, all the way through after the Civil War. We're actually very educated individuals and politicians and running governments and doing our own fucking thing throughout America. So we have to kill this slave narrative because it's not true. They told it in reverse. Complete reverse. I'm gonna show you some white runaway slaves. You know what I'm saying? But definitely go over to TikTok. If you need your MOI fix of information, I do drop more stuff on TikTok than I do go live. So I appreciate you. Thanks you, sis. That's amazing that you follow me on every platform. I appreciate the support too. Thank you. Be sure to share my shit though, sis. Like share it. Like you know what I mean? Share it or tag people that you know that be on the same wavelength. You know what I mean? Because I do these lives. I be wanting somebody to come in with me and build with me. I could be by myself, of course, but let me know, sis. I'm definitely with that. Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, in the fucking building. What's happening, Huntsville, Alabama? Oh, as I should call it the correct name, Alibaba. Alibaba is in the building. I think Alabama's gonna be in the news coming up soon for February. For Fat Tuesday, you guys know that the Mardi Gras starts in Mobile, Alabama. I hope you guys know that shit. No, Huntsville and Mobile, a couple hours away, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, George, but you guys might want to hightail it down to Mobile, Alabama in February. That's where Mardi Gras is going to start in Mobile, and there's a whole history of why and how Mardi Gras started in Mobile, um, which is, in my humble opinion, Hallow Eve in October and the festival of Fat Tuesday in February correlates the same way Christmas and Easter correlates for Christians. Okay, um, even though these are Catholic based celebrations, Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras, and so on and so forth, is the veneration of the saints. Um, there's a lot of history and legacy that goes behind even the celebration of Mardi Gras. Um, the costumes that the Indians wear down there, the second line dances, all that stuff, man, it's all encompassing. It's a really cool ass history of Mobile, Alabama, and Mardi Gras. If you guys look into it, or Alibaba, if you guys want to look into that information. Montgomery has a huge history of a lot of native people in Montgomery as well. Uh, oh, listen, send. I think I know Neo X, but tell Neo X to hit me up, have a conversation because, or she try to tell us that we're from Africa. Okay. See, I was about to keep going, Truth, but now this for the next 11 minutes, next 12 minutes, this conversation is between me and Truth Be Told, real quick. Truth Be Told, let me give you some information that you might not know. If you know it, cool, just listen to it again. All right. Let's look up who is the founding father for African American studies? Okay. The founder for African American studies is Carter G. Wilson, the father of Black history. Watch this. Wait a minute. What was Melvin Herkovich known for? Uh-oh. Melvin Herkovich is known for his work as an American anthropologist, particularly for his groundbreaking research on African and African American cultures, which helped to establish the field of African studies in the United States. He is renowned for his disproving the idea that African Americans completely lost their African heritage and demonstrating the continuing of African culture influences in the Americas. He also founded the African and African American Studies program at Northwest University and was vocal advocate for independence of African nations. This is Melville Herkovich. Ask her if she's ever heard of Melville Herkovich, because Melville Herkovich is responsible for Negroes thinking they came out of Africa. Not just him by himself, though. I'm going to give you other people as well. So, sis, write down Melvin Herkovich and go study Melvin Herkovich, please. You see how I just showed you how they say that Carter G. Wilson is the father of African American study? That's not true. He got it from somebody else. Melvin Herkovich establishes the subject matter. Okay. Melville Gene Herkovich was an American anthropologist known for pioneering his work for African diaspora studies. He was famous for arguing that African cultures have a significant persistence and influence in African American communities in helping establish the field of American academia. He was a pioneer in academic studies. He cultural continuance, collaborative works, ethical revision, contributions to scholarships. This is Melville Herkovich. He is the father of African studies, not John Henry Clark, not Ivan Van Sertima, not John G. Jackson. Melville Herkovich, a Caucasoid, a YT. Melville Herkovich, 1895 to 1963, was an American anthropologist who helped to establish African and African diaspora studies in American academia. Was not even a thing. Was not even a thing. The YTs taught you from Africa. Write that name down, sis. Please write that name down. Write that shit down. I'm gonna give you another one besides Melville Herkovich. Who is Franz Boas? Franz Boas was a German-born American anthropologist and the father of American anthropology. You're going to always see the father of, the founding father of. This is the educational system. I gave you Melville Herkovich, and I'm giving you Franz Boas. And you're having your next conversation with Neo X. Ask Neo X, do you know who Melville Herkovich is? This is how you unravel that shit. Sis, ask her, have you ever heard of Melville Herkovich? Probably going to say no. The follow-up question is, have you heard of Franz Boas? Probably going to say no. At that point, you could probably conclude anything that comes out of her mouth about the African diaspora, she's just repeating and has not done her research yet. Because researchers show you that nobody with melanin created the subject matter of African anything when it comes to studying or any of that shit. The YTs created the subject matter. Egyptology is created by YTs. African American studies created by YTs. The entire American school curriculum base was created by YTs, and not just any YTs, Germans. Melville Herkovich, German. Franz Boas, German. This next guy I'm about to show you, German. What was his name? Write this name down. Horace Mann. Write down Horace Mann. I done gave you three names. Three names. In 2026, we're not effing around with people. Stop debating on TikTok. Stop debating in these little chats and these groups. Start calling names. Y'all have to make these people y'all talking to and debating with, give y'all names and times and dates. Stop wasting y'all breath. Stop wasting y'all time trying to convince people. People believe a lot of information. Horace Mann, called the father of public education, the father of American public education, for his works in advocating for establishing a system of free universal public schools in the United States, also known as a father of common school movement. Father of public education, father of commission school movement, father of American education. He's the father of American education. That means everything that Franz Boas and Melville Herkovich is giving you came also by way of this YT. Thank you. Thank you, sis. That's it. And see, I just want to arm y'all for success. Because see, when you in these crowded spaces, in these crowded rooms or wherever y'all on having these conversations, and if you start talking like this, everybody listens because you don't sound like everybody else. That's what makes the M.O.I. the M.O.I. I don't sound like everybody else. I'm not showing you what everybody else is showing you. I'm sure this shit is so simple at this point. But see, everybody want to be the first with the information, so they just put shit out. And oh, it ain't that deep. No, I'm gonna go deep. I'm gonna go deep every time with you. Like I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole with you every single time, and it's gonna take a little bit of time to get the information up because it's a lot of fucking information. Well, you think college is 4 to 6 years. School is 12 years. It takes years to learn stuff. Not in a 2 hour live. You can't learn in 2 hour live. That's why I tell you guys to take notes, write down dates, write down places, write down names. Then go do your own research after you listen to me. I'm not here to give y'all nothing. Y'all already know this stuff, by the way. I'm just reminding y'all. This is just a reminder. I'm one crying out from the wilderness, reminding you guys of the information. This is here. Like I'm not writing the books. This shit is already out, y'all. This information is already out and it's been out. I'm just showing y'all the stuff. So next time you have a conversation with somebody talking about whatever it is fucking talking about, ask them these 3 people I gave you. I gave you 3 people: Melvin Herkovich, Horace Mann, and what's his name? The other guy. Guy's name that quick. Franz Boas. Those 3 people. That's all you got to ask them, sis. Don't even fuss no more. So this is perfect. This actually slingshots me into my next part of the conversation. All divine order. I appreciate you, sis. All divine order. Now let's go to the first black colonial colonial school. What? That says Colonel. I'm sorry, y'all. Colony school. That's what I call it. Colony school. This is your first all-black institution of learning right here, guys. Not Hampton University, not Howard, not none of the HBCUs. It ain't none of those. It ain't none of those. Now we will learn about other institutions of learning also, but this is Williamsburg Bray School, early black school in Virginia, 1760. 1760. 1760 is way before 1779, before you start getting those titles, those allodial titles. Remember what Noble Drew Ali said, right? Negro, black, and colored were titles given to you by slaveholders in 1776, and it lasted till about 1865. Negro, black, and colored were all titles given to you by slaveholders. And those slaveholders were not in America in 1776. Those slaveholders were in Britain. Those slaveholders that gave you those titles were not in the colonies. So don't think about massa on the plantation. There were no plantations in 1776 yet. Not the way they show you in movies. We can talk about who the real planters were, the ones who started these companies. Just by a show of hands in the chat, press 111 if you are a business owner and you have an LLC. Press 111. Hell, even if you're familiar with the process of how to start a business, press 111 in the chat. Teach y'all something real quick. I want to teach y'all how to look at this shit. So, black folk get all emotional when you bring up slavery because of psychoneurosis, But thank you, True King. If you have an LLC, or if you just know about the business of LLCs and businesses, put 111 in the comments real quick. And I'm going to show you something real quick. And we'll come right back to this, I promise you. I'm going to my notes. Going to my notes. So we have 3 particular companies. Okay. 3 particular companies, because we're talking about LLCs. We're talking about business. This was business. All right. This is a business conversation. Let's go here real quick. You guys write this shit down. Write down the British East Indian Company, EIC, was a powerful English and later British joint stock company founded in 1600 that played a significant role in British imperialism. Initially formed for trade in the Indian Ocean, it became a de facto ruler of India, controlling trade, spices, textiles, and tea while conquering and governing vast territories. The EIC was eventually dissolved in 1874 after its rule led to widespread resentment and major rebellion, after which British government took direct control of India. It was founded in the 1600s. The company was officially chartered as the governor of the company. The company was officially chartered as the governor and company of merchants of London trading in East India. It was initial goal was to break up the Dutch monopoly on the spice trade in the East Indies. Shift to India. It soon shifted the focus to India and established the first trading post in 1612. The EIC gained monopoly over the trading in Indian textile and became incredibly popular in Britain. So this is called the British East Indian Company. That's one company. Write that company down. What bro said? Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Okay, so we got the one company. Now here's the next company. And I'm showing you guys this to show you that this was all business. These LLCs got formulated and they got together and they pitched their money in and they became conglomerates. Here's the next company. The next company is called Virginia Company of London. It's a joint stock company also. When you see the word joint stock, it means there's a lot of people involved. It's probably like a hedge fund. You know what a hedge fund is? Look it up. This was a collective. This was a conglomerate. This was a couple of individuals pitching in together. Okay, this is what this was. Me, True King. Truth be told, we all put up 700,000 to get up each. Let's say 500,000 each. That's $1.5 million. Me, True King, and Truth be told, we're gonna put up 500,000 each. It's 1.5 million. We're gonna get a couple ships built off that 1.5 million. We're gonna hire staff to manage that shit, and our whole intent is to get involved in the trading game. Trading spices, trading bodies, trading tobacco, trading sugar, whatever we can trade, we're gonna get involved. We got to hire a security force too to protect our ships. And the return on investment is anybody want to work on these ships, you get free passage to the Americas, but you have to do a 7-year contract once you get there. And people were signing up literally by the boatload. People were signing up. We call them people indentured servants. That's the polite way of saying it. But these motherfuckers just wanted to get away, go work for 7 years. And these are mostly YT people who were the first contractors to work aboard these ships to go over to the new founding country, which later became known as the colonies. But these companies, I got one more company to give you too. It says the Virginia Company of London was a joint stock company chartered by King James I in 1606 to establish English colonies in North America with the primary goal of finding gold, not picking cotton, not rice, not tobacco. And they wanted to find a route to the Pacific and spreading patriotism. This was again the I forgot the Puritans and the Quakers and all that kind of shit as well. Anyway, well, the Puritans were pissed off at King James for changing the Bible, for allowing the King Henry VIII version of the Bible to be changed to the King James version in 1611. So the Puritans left. They got the hell on. It founded Jamestown settlement in 1607. The first permanent English colony. Despite success like cultivating profitable tobacco, the company ultimately failed due to financial struggles and mismanagement and conflicts with native population. The Virginia Company of London ran by King James. And we know that King James was of color. Okay? I don't care how you try to put it, but where you try to use, brother was a brother. All right? And of course, what the other company I'm gonna give you guys real quick. Well, it's two more, sorry. This is 1607. King James chartered this one. King James also chartered another company. It's called the Royal African Company. Oh, I'm sorry. This was chartered by King Charles, another Negro. The Royal African Company was monopolistic trading company chartered by King Charles II in 1672 that dominated the English slave trade in West Africa. It was created to compete with the Dutch. The Dutch was killing it. I'm telling y'all. Everybody was against the Portuguese were trying to get the Dutch was killing it. It was created to compete with the Dutch dominance in the region and was a central part of the English transatlantic slave trade, transporting approximately 212,000 enslaved people from the mid 1600s to 1731 before abandoning the practice focused on commodities like ivory and gold. Established in 1672 by a charter under King Charles II, the company was granted monopoly the English trade with West Africa. Its headquarters was in Cape Coast Castle. Royal African Company. We could talk a little bit more about that as well. So King James, swarthy. She said, I didn't know about King Charles. I know. Just wait till you find out the original 3 founding kings of the eastern seaboard of America were all black people. James was Virginia and the Northern Territory. Charles, the Carolinas. And then, of course, Georgia. They couldn't get Florida because Spain still owned Florida at that time. But yeah. Let me show you. Because, as black people, ooh, great point, George. Hold that point. As people of color, I'm going to ask you, what the hell your mama call you? What your mama call you? Watch this. King Charles II, mother called him the little black boy. Oop, there it is. Okay, sis, truth be told, let's read this shit. Yes, King Charles II was nicknamed the Black Boy by his mother, Queen Harriet Marana, and she was also of Moorish descent. Due to his dark hair, dark eyes, and swarthy black ass complex, the term black in the 17th century was commonly used to describe individuals with darker complex or darker hair, not necessarily perfect African descent in the term used today. Dark skin, Moorish, swarthy, Stuart, because George made a good point right here by saying that James and Charles were cousins because they were both, there was just the black Europeans, that's all. And black Europeans and black Africans had a huge role in the transatlantic slave trade. We give the YT people way too much fucking credit. Way too much credit. House of Stuart. Watch this. Stuart. Let's see what Stuart means. Why is it a House of Stuart? Means, let's try this right quick. Hold on. Let's look at the common root then. Look at the common root. The name Stuart does not directly mean swarthy, but the two words are related through a common root and share a historical connection to the meaning of dark or black. So Stuart has a connection to the word black. The surname Stuart is an angelicized version of Stuart, while swarthy comes from the Old English swarth, which also means dark or black, and relate to the German Schwarz. The confusion often stems from historical account like the nickname the swarthy Stuart given to Charles II. Stuart, the name comes from the word steward, which originally titled an official charge of the House of State. Swarthy comes from the Old English word. The association between the two words, and largely due to historical use of swarthy to describe people of dark complexity, including King Charles, a member of the Stuart dynasty. His future led to the name of the black boy, the swarthy Stuart. So we also have another word. Watch this. That's the one I probably should put in first. Tudor. Tudor. Here we go. Swarthy history. Here we go. Sorry. Descriptions of the same historical figures from the Tudor era, such as Anna Boleyn, another black queen, has used the word term swarthy to describe her complexity, which typically meant they had olive or tan complexion or dark hair. In contrast, then implies very pale, sun-avoiding skin. However, the description of individuals within that period, not definition, the term Tudor itself. So individuals in that period, the origin of the word swarthy, black. And we know the word black, 16th century. But let's go here for 1 second. Let's bring up, boom. I'll copy this real quick. Throw it up here. Bam. Give you an image to look at. Here we go. Now, off the rip, they're fucking whitewashed, okay? But this is the real Queen Anna, okay? Let's read about Queen Anna. So we got Charles, swarthy, James, swarthy. I can show you George, who's also swarthy, and several others, all the way down to Charlotte, which Charles II establishes the Carolinas as what they call, not prostrate states, but the word escapes me. Damn, I forgot the word. But anyway, Charles II set up the Carolinas, and then, of course, out of the Carolinas, you get Charlotte, which is his great grandma, some shit like that, or great descendant somewhere down the line. Charles and Charlotte is also, and Charlotte's mother is of also Moorish bloodline as well. So anyway, Anna, real quick. Anna did not use the word swarthy to describe herself. Rather, she was described as having a swarthy complexion by contemporary observers in Venetia, document Francisco Santino in 1532. Other contemporaries rather agreed that she was very dark. Okay, that's just what it is. Early historians and the grandson of the poet Sir Thompson Wyatt mentioned she was not so whitely. She was not white. Nicholas Sanders, a Catholic writer, described her complexion as shallow and troubled with Janus. Damn. In the context, 16th century swarthy suggested a darker olive tone, stark contrast, highly prized, fashionable pale skin. The physical description, along with her black eyes and her dark hair, contributes to her being considered unconventionally beauty through, though she was noted for her charm, wit, and whatever the fuck that means right there. Anna Boyd was very dark. What she looked like? Perhaps the most famous description of Anna was written by a Venetian diplomat, the same guy. Not one of her handmaids women in the world. She was middling stature, swarthy complexion, long neck, wide mouth, bosom not much raised, and eyes were black and beautiful. We took the long way around for that answer to show you guys. But the House of Stuart, it was called the Tudor Stuart, or Stuart Tudor. Tudor Stuart. Let me get this right for y'all real quick. Tudor Stuart. There you go. See? The Tudor Stuart was a period referred to the era of English history between 1485 and 1714, marked the rule of the Tudor dynasty and sequentially the Stuart dynasty. The Tudor era ended with Elizabeth I. This is the same chick who gave John Hawkins the damn charter for the first slave ship. And then James comes behind her with another slave ship. And then here comes Charles with another slave ship. These are black people doing this shit. These are not white Europeans doing Nathan. Nothing. This is us, our people. So when you do your 23andMe and your spit swab test, and they tell you that you have a little bit of European in your blood, they're not talking about the YT ones, they're talking about the darker ones, the swarthy Europeans. You do have swarthy Europeans in your blood, and you have some Moorish in your blood. You have everything else in your blood. Everything but Native Americans, conveniently, because they never took blood from Native Americans. I don't know. You can't belong to a tribe by your blood. That shit is crazy. It gets wickedly crazy after a while. But at any rate, quick crash on. I ain't mean to crash out on the history, but this is it is what it is. The Tudor ended with Queen Elizabeth in 1603 without heirs, and the Stuart era began with her cousin James VI, same King James, and uniting the crowns of Scotland, and that's when the Tudor Stuart dynasty joined. That became both houses. They're really black people. The Tudors were also swarthy, and the Stuarts were also swarthy people. Now you got a double entendre of Negroes in Europe from 1485 to 1714, probably before then, but at least of written history we know about. And they do everything in their power to downplay it. Like, oh, they wasn't black. They were I don't know. They weren't black. But anything over here in North America that looked like it's dark skin, by way of Albert Plecker, if you had one drop of, remember the one drop rule in America that got invoked in the 1920s? Somehow the one drop rule doesn't apply in Europe though. Crazy, right? You got one drop of African blood and you should be that. One drop, just one. But as you do your research on these African kings, I'm saying using the word African. Let me not say the word African, Lord have mercy. The darker hue people of Europe who ruled Europe don't get tripped up, dodged, or hijacked on a lot of the words and terminology they use. You're not going to find the word blackness. You got to use the word tawny, swarthy, something like that. You can't use a word that wasn't invented at that time. The word black don't come out until the 1600s. So in 1485, you really can't use the word black, even though Google knows what you're implying. It will misdirect you if you don't read the entire thing. So I wanted to kind of expound on that for that reason. Now let's go back to our regular schedule program. We ain't gonna never get past. We ain't gonna never get to the goddamn outline. Oh, because I was giving y'all all the companies. That's right. Let's just skip all that and go right here. Because I was giving you guys all the different companies, the slave trading companies. I think I was giving you guys that. Here it is. Had to go right here so we can save some time. The British East Indian Company, Virginia Company, the Royal African Company, and the Dutch West Indian Company in 1621, responsible for roughly 300,000 enslaved Africans shipped to the Americas. And the note says to explain all of these corporations with shareholders, all of these companies. So you guys don't get any feelings. Were joint stock and chartered companies. Okay. So when you hear the word transatlantic slave trade, Henry Louis Gates did not. I was thinking he had African and Tony Irish. Oh, that's crazy. Anytime you hear the Atlantic slave trade, I want you guys to immediately switch your brain to think about joint stock and chartered companies. Okay? Everybody say it. Joint stock and chartered companies. One more time. Joint stock and chartered companies. Now that we know these were joint stock and chartered companies, we now know these were business transactions. So now that we know there was business transaction, we can go back and track the business and the companies and who sat on the board and who was the president and who held these charters in perpetuity. And we can do some homework now. We ain't got to be all emotional. Man, the white people from Europe kidnapped black people from Africa, and we can kill that story. In 2026, we're not telling that story no more. Anybody around you tries to tell that same tired ass story for Black History Month this year, stop them and ask them who was responsible for bringing Africans to the Americas, not North America, because we know that ain't true. Just ask them who was responsible for bringing Africans to the Americas, Central and South America in particular. Who? If they can't give you British East Indian Company, Virginia Company, the Royal African Company, the Dutch West Indian Company, if they don't know that these were joint stock chartered companies as engines of empire, then they're wrong. I'm making that statement out loud to y'all right now. They had shareholders, boards, government charters. They normalized the idea that black bodies were just another commodity moving through the Atlantic. Sugar, tobacco, cotton, and people. That corporate logic will later be mirrored in schools that measure Black and Native children not as thinkers but laborers. This part right here, this corporate, because it became a corporate logic. The corporate logic, the corporate logic will be mirrored in schools that measure Black and Native children not as thinkers but labor units. Now I'm going to go into the education system of Black folks and so-called Indians. They're all the same people, but the indigenous population of North America and the mindset behind people like Horace Mann, the father of American education, Melvin Herkovich. See, once you understood that the purpose of this was not to educate anybody they ever brought or captured while they was here, that's in the Native Americans and also some of the Africans who were brought to the Americas, the purpose of them coming over here was not to go to a goddamn out-of-state tuition school. No, you coming to work. Because the YTs we sent over here earlier, they ran away. The earlier indentured servants who came on the earlier colonial ships ran to the South. There was the 1700 Fugitive Slave Act invoked for white runaways. The white runaways ran to the South because Georgia was set up as a free colony by James Oglethorpe. Georgia was never established to be a slave colony. It became a slave colony later, but in the interim of that, the white folks had a safe place to run to. It was a safe haven for white runaways. That's what Georgia was set up for by James Oglethorpe. So in turn, these same colonial companies was like, damn, our labor force that we had on the contract, they breached a contract. So how are we going to continue to get this labor going? Ooh, why don't we make deals with some of the African powers to get some of their bodies? It's got a lot of bodies down there and they'll work. And they made a deal with one Queen Nzinga. And she, not just her, I mean, it was other participants, but Queen Nzinga stood out the most. Over about 250,000 Africans, she like this, raised a lot of people. But this idea of a corporate mindset that people were treated as corporate laborers and not to be educated, this carried on throughout the education system, which you're about to see right now. Hold on. The early American education system was impacted by this. Y'all done got me off on some other stuff now. Let's talk about some slave ownership, and then we'll dive into the education. Hold on. Let me get this off my screen. I want you guys to write this guy down. Write down, I'm sorry, the subject, we're now in the 1800s. I think we left off around 1770. The population of Negroes of 378 as counted in 1770. This is pre-census. Then we're going to jump down to the 1850s. This is pre-Civil War and post-Civil War. This is going to the Reconstruction conversation, Reconstruction era. Now I'm gonna bounce back and forth from that first Black institution and come walk you all the way down through history and show you the other Black institutions as well. Okay, so just stay with me. Write down Edward Rainey. Edward Rainey is the father of Joseph Rainey. Joseph Rainey is a Black politician. Let's read. Let's pay attention to what's being said. Negroes are buying other Negroes in 1850, which is not strange because Africans bought other Negroes in the 1620s. Okay? And he was known as the father of Black communities in the 1600s. Not Edward Rainey, the other guy I'm telling you about in a second. Edward Rainey was an independent and well-known, respected trade that enabled him to build a wide social network in his community. By 1850, Edward Rainey had purchased himself, had a slave, back up. By 1850, Edward Rainey had purchased a slave himself. By 1860, he had purchased more slaves. most likely working in his barbershop along with Joseph. Now, Joseph is his son. Joseph is the one we're going to talk about in history. So we now know that Joseph Rainey, these are black people right there, Joseph Rainey. His father, Edward Rainey, was a slaveholder, several slaves. So what's about to bust your bubble here in a second? They were slaves. So you could be a slave, buy your way out of freedom. By the way, one more time, buying your way out of freedom means you paid off the debt bond that was attached to you. Okay, that's what they talk about in movies when they say, I'm going to buy my freedom." You can't buy freedom. Freedom is, you cannot, you act free or you are free. But what they're referring to is a documentation. And that's why you always see in movies, they ask the question, where your freedom papers at? Or where your papers at? They're asking, where is the bill of sales? Where is the certificate of sales? Who signed it? Is it notarized? Yes, planter John, whoever, John Baker, the planter of the Southern Mississippi Plantation, authorized and signed that I have completed my term. And here's my fucking receipt. That's what they're asking for. Where's your receipt? Where's your paperwork they're asking for? Anyway, Edward Rainey, the father of Joseph Rainey. So write down Edward Rainey. Write down Joseph Rainey. Let's read about Joseph Rainey real quick. Joseph Rainey, U.S. House Representative, South Carolina, 1st District. He was in the U.S. House of Representatives. Y'all see that? 1870. And this is supposed time, 1870, there were, what do they call them? Anti-literacy laws. Anti-literacy laws. Watch this. Write down Joseph Rainey, 1870. Write that down. Joseph Rainey, 1870. When were the first anti-literacy law? Oh shit. When was the first anti-literacy law invoked? 1740. 1740 anti-literacy laws. 1740 anti-literacy. That means what? If you catch a nigga reading, learning how to read, trying to be educated, ain't gonna happen. Now, although there were 1740 South Carolina anti-literacy laws, also look what was happening in 17. What was that? Yeah, 1740. Shit. Yeah. Where'd it go? I'm sorry, 1760. 20 years. So 20 years after the first anti-literacy laws were passed, you get your first black schools, all Negro schools. So Negroes were learning in spite of anti-literacy laws. So you could read and write. We could read and write. We could. A lot of people read and write. Watch this. And I'm going back and forth between the information. Y'all who know me know how I teach. The first known formal school for black children were in the colonies, the Williamsburg Bray School, founded in Williamsburg, Virginia in 1760 by the Association of Dr. Bray. It was one of several schools established across the colonies, though it was the oldest surviving building specifically for the purpose, while the school taught enslaved and free Negroes. It taught enslaved and free. Enslaved Negroes, one group, and freedmen, another group of Negroes. Okay? So write that down. Write enslaved and freedmen. I know freedmen can also refer to Indians as well, but let's stick to the program real quick. Several schools in 1760. Although 1740, you had to deal with the anti-literacy laws of 1740. Okay, peace and love, sister. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Even though you had to deal with those anti-literacy laws in 1740, there were still we're still being educated. So when people ask you what was the first, listen to my words very carefully. Don't deviate from what I'm saying. Ask them what was the first Black learning institution in North America. Say it exactly like that. Don't say college, don't say school, don't say none of that shit. Say what was the first learning Black institution in America? Williams Bray School for Black children. It says the purpose, while the school was taught to enslave and free Black children to read, write, and follow Christian faith, it was also designed to reinforce the social structures of slavery and teach obedience, according to the New York Times. The foundation and purpose was founded in 1760 by the Association of Dr. Bray, an Anglican missionary. They're always going to talk about the missionaries because the first missionaries to hold on. The first missionaries to come to the shores of North America came by way of what you call pilgrims. Remember that? Those are the Brownings, the Calvinists, the Puritans, the Quakers, the Anglicans. So those individuals began to set up these parochial schools. William Penn for Pennsylvania was a huge contributor to abolitionists. Okay, let's keep going. The curriculum, students learn to read, write, though not often to write, to prevent forgery. And so, however, a key part of the curriculum was religious instruction, which was intended to reinforce Christian teachings and the existence of social order of slavery. They taught the social order of slavery in these schools to Negro children while they were young. So you talk about, oh boy. You talk about psychoneurosis and how psychoneurosis affects the minds of children. This shit been going on for a long time. Education impact. Despite the intentions of schools, education it provided empowered some students who later become the first teachers of Joint First Baptist churches in Williamsburg. Here is your religious overtone for this information. That's going to lead that this is 1740, so this is what's called the First Great Awakening. This comes out of the First Great Awakening. What year was the First Great Awakening in America? Remember, the school is what, 1760 for the school. See right here, the First Great Awakening took place between 1730 and 1770, which peak period often cited through 1739, 1742. It was a spiritual revival movement that swept through the colonies, marking the passion for preaching from figures like George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards. Now, out of this First Great Awakening, these types of schools we're talking about for these first Black folks, these first niggers, Williamsburg Bray School, right, which was a religious institution where they learned to read and write, and so, right, it followed the Christian faith. It comes off the heels of the First Great Awakening, which was the first part of the religious movement in North America. All right, check. Now let's go back to Mr. Rainey, because we now know that 1740 anti-literacy laws were passed. 1760 Negroes were in school. So from 1760 to 1832 is about what, maybe 100 years, not even 100 years, less than 100 years. Joseph Rainey was born in 1832 in Georgetown, South Carolina. His mother was of an indigenous French descent. Indigenous. I wonder what Joseph Rainey's mother was. What tribe was Joseph Rainey's mother? Let's take a look, because I'm curious now. Joseph Rainey. Let's put it in here. Let's see. What American tribe was Joseph Rainey's mother from? Let's see what it tells us. Does not tell us which tribe. It's not mentioned here. Indigenous and French descent. Yeah, it doesn't tell us. I mean, we probably can dig a little bit more, find out, but for the sake of time, we don't have to do all that. I was just curious to wonder. Joseph Rainey was an American politician. He was the first black person to serve United States House Representative. That's the important stuff you need to know about Joseph Rainey. He was the first black person, first person of color, black person to serve the United States House of Representative. And the second person after Hiram Rebels. Hiram Rebels was the first black senator of Mississippi. Newsflash, this is also during slavery. Slavery is still happening. Even though the Civil War supposedly just ended, and this is the Reconstruction era, slavery is still happening in Mississippi, Alabama, and southern Georgia. These are the descendants of supposed slaves. Well, we can't say that because Hiram Rebels was never a slave. Joseph Rainey was, his father was, but we're going to read about his father. Now, his father ended up owning slaves. So here you have two prominent brothers, both politicians, post Civil War, supposedly during human trafficking, slavery, lynching, and Django, and whatever other slave movie you saw. Because I don't care what none of y'all say. Until you, I will cash up y'all $100 if you can prove me wrong. The movies, listen to the movies. I'm gonna name. I'm not talking about Amistad, so don't bring that up. I'm talking about 12 Years a Slave, Roots, Django. Those three movies are portraying the 1800s of North American slavery. None of those movies are going to show you any Africans coming off of a ship. The closest scene we get is in the movie Roots, is when Fittler is explaining to the crowd of Indian Negroes on the plantation what a African is. That's the closest you're going to get to African being mentioned in any of those movies, because those movies are all about the indigenous black population of North America and what's known as the second domestic slave trade that happened right here. Y'all didn't come from Africa. That's why your cousins and your great cousins and your aunties, and no matter how far you go back, you're going to end up in Chicago, Arkansas. You're going to end up in Connecticut, Ohio, New York, Philly, Atlanta. You're going to end up somewhere around here. You're not going to end up nowhere in the tribe of Mali or Uganda. You're not going to go that. You can't go. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. The 23andMe shit was all made up. This guy experiment with 23andMe. He took a Q-tip and used his iguana and sent it in and says iguana is African. Iguanas is not from. This shit is, listen, y'all. This shit is crazy. Back to this. Joseph Hayne Rainey was an American politician, was the first black person to serve United States House Representative. How did he get in there? Negroes were voting back then? I thought we couldn't vote, y'all. I thought we had to fight to vote. I thought we had to, like, the water hose. Remember the water hoses and the dogs and Dr. King, everybody fighting for vote, fighting for equal rights and all that shit. How were these Negroes being elected? Who were putting them in office? The millions of freedmen were putting them in office. That's who. That's who. Hiram Rebels, first senator. Let's read about Joseph Rainey some more. He's born into a family of farmers and planters. Rainey was a member of the Republican Party. Everybody black was Republican back then. Joseph Haynes Rainey was born in 1832 in Georgetown, South Carolina. His mother, and we know in 1832 because in 1770, black people were 70% of the population of South Carolina. So everybody we will talk about is going to be from South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, okay? Because the South was ruled by Negroes. Still is. Joseph Haynes Rainey was born in 1832 in Georgetown, South Carolina. His mother Grace was of an indigenous and French descent. His father Edward Rainey had been allowed by his master to work independently and earn money and develop a successful business as a barber. How many slave owners were letting their slaves go be entrepreneurs? Why don't why wait a minute, 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 wait a minute. He was allowed to start a successful business. This is entrepreneur as a slave. As a barber, he paid a portion of his income to his master as required by law. What? He paid a portion of his income as required by law. Let's look into this. Let's look into this right here. Hold on. Let me pull up another search box, y'all. Do y'all see that shit? Slaves have to pay their master to work? That sounds like taxes, don't it? Hold on. I say it and I say it again. If there was a HR and EO department during the time of slavery, y'all black ass will have never heard of slavery. Ever heard of it. It was unequal work for unequal pay. That's what happened with slavery. Okay. Oh man, it's not what I want. Hold on, family. Why would a slave pay? It was specific, man. Of course, it come to his master. And what was the name of the requirement by law? A slave, oh, y'all, listen, we're gonna read this together. Let's read it together. A slave would pay a portion of their income to their enslaver to incentivize hard worker, particularly in a self-hire situation where a slave would market their own skilled labor. There was no specific law that required this. Rather, it was a common practice for skilled slaves who were hired out to work in urban areas. The portion of the slave kept was called priculum in some contexts, like ancient Rome, though the term was not used in the American slave system. Oh boy. What was this? In ancient Rome, a piculum was a fund or property such as money that a master allowed a slave to manage for their own private use. I thought y'all said slaves didn't make no money back then. Because I can show you way more I'm doing air quotes. More slaves that also earn money also. I can show you some slaves that also got what do you call it? What slaves looking for? Payment. Help me out, y'all. They're saying that descendants of slave deserves what's that word? Compensation, basically. I can show you some black slave owners who got compensated for letting their slaves go too. Did y'all know that slaves earn money? Press 222 if you had no idea that slaves were getting money. Now it's going to make sense when Kanye says slavery was a choice, but we'll get to that in a second. All right. I'm the one bringing y'all this shit. I'm so excited because I also brought you the fact that Harriet Tubman was getting paid to free slaves also. They did not tell y'all the right story. They're not telling y'all the right story. This is the story that you never heard. Why was this incentive? It gave skilled slaves, such as blacksmiths or carpenters, a reason to work diligently for their employer. Some slaves saved a portion to keep eventually purchasing their freedom. Remember this right here? How they gonna purchase their freedom? They bought the debt bond. It's called a debt bond. or bit bond for your freedom. Anybody in the comments listening, you guys ever not ever been to jail, but know somebody who has been locked up before or went to jail before, or maybe went to jail yourself? You have to get a bondsman to pay your bond. That bond is a debt owed for your freedom. So in these times, they were purchasing what was called a bit bond. Reparations. Thank you. God damn it. Thank you. Reparations. I can show you Negroes who got reparations during the time of Lincoln. That's why the black population in America, and you ain't finna get Nathaniel from nobody because they already gave it out already. Prove you're, and it's hard to prove that you were a descendant of slaves. You have to you have to prove that you were a descendant of slaves, and also prove that you're from Africa. And you're gonna spend the next 100 years of your life trying to prove that shit when you can just accept the fact that your name from Africa and you never was a slave. It's easier to accept the fact that you were never a slave. Like nobody was slaving. We had some skilled tradesmen in our family who worked for white folk, and the white folk sometimes didn't really pay them properly, or would, not pay them at all. But what were they going to do? Not go to work next day? They had to continue to work for it. And it's those same horrible. It was just horrible conditions to work in. I'm not downplaying slavery. It was horrible. It was horrible. But it was not the way they told y'all, man. The lynching of black people started way after slavery, not during slavery. But let's go on. It increased productivity. Enslavers believed that allowing enslaved to keep a portion of their earnings would make them work harder and become more careful with their work and tools. Skilled laborers. This were more common for skilled slaves who were hired out to work on their own rather than those working on plantations or in domestic settings. Self-hire, the system where skilled enslaved people were allowed to find their own jobs, pay their enslavers a portion of their wages, and use the rest for their own needs. Y'all saw it for yourself right here. M.O.I. brought y'all this shit. Listen, man. I can't make this stuff up. I can only hope that you guys are starting to realize, like, wait a minute. Something ain't right. Right. So the point of explaining the bond situation is this is what you would see in movies or whatever. Slaves were buying their bonds or purchasing their bonds. So when you watch these slave movies and they get caught on those little dirt roads and ask where your freedom papers at, freedom papers were the receipts showing that their work has been completed. They're no longer under that condition. They have bonded themselves out of jail or out of penal system, right? And you work at a corrections center, so you know that these are penal colonies. I'm sorry, penal camps. I did a live before called the Penal Colony, and that's what the 13 colonies in the subsidiary 48 colonies we live in today. These are all penal colonies. By way of taxes, we have to pay back a portion of our money. That is the most crazy. Listen, when y'all just sit down one day and think about the fact that y'all work so hard, those of us who have jobs and are entrepreneurs, think about how hard you work. Just think about a real tough week at work. You don't put in your 40 hours or 38 hours, whatever you work, and you get your check or your direct deposit to whatever institution you bank with, and you look at your pay stub, you're like, damn, I would have made all this money, but they got the FICA tax on there, the state tax on there, some other shit on there, medical, dental, vision, and if you got a 401k, so you're not working for your full wages. This is the same thing that was happening back then. It was just no rhyme and reason back then because the Federal Income Tax Act has not been established at this time. So this is just them giving tithing. Because remember, the 1740 schools, Negroes had been taught from 1740 about tithing and offering, about the religious attributes of being a slave also. So this was hardwired in their system. This is hardwired in their brains that you get, giving a portion of what you just worked for back to your master was okay. Now it's pimping. It's definitely pimping. They definitely got pimped. And that's what I'm trying to tell y'all. Slavery was a pimp game. It was pimping the hell out of them. and they was beating them like whores and making them go back to work with bloody eyes and big lips and all kind of stuff. Go get my money. And God forbid if they broke one of the hoes or broke one of the shovels or broke a wheelbarrow, they came out of their money and they didn't get that money. So it was a vicious cycle of just them being cheated out of their finance. And black folk at large never became too financial literate since then. Some did. Some got on board and some, start scamming too. And I'm gonna show you the black scammers in a minute. Joseph Rainey's father was one of those black scammers. But let's go on. Edward saved a substantial sum by 1840. He purchased his freedom. See right here? He purchased his freedom, his wives, and 2 sons. Anytime you see that shit right there, purchasing freedom, think about the fact that they're buying a bond. They're paying off a debt. With the opportunity, opportunities for education and education severely limited for black people, Rainey followed into his father's footsteps as a barber professional and adult. It was an independent and well-respected trade that enabled him to build a wide social network in his community. By 1850, however, Edward Rainey had purchased slaves himself. By 1860, he had purchased more slaves, most likely working in the barbershop along with Joseph. Wow. His father, who was a slave. Now, I just showed you how slaves were paid and how slaves also owned other slaves in America. Anything to the contrary, tell them to show you the proof. I just showed you the proof that other slaves also owned other slaves. I can go all the way back to the 1620s to Anthony Johnson, who was a slave himself or indentured servant himself, finished his 7-year contract and he bought slaves and had land and went to court and all kind of shit, right? It happened. Why aren't you hearing that part? Or why aren't we discussing what we did to ourselves? Why are we so adamant about what white folk done to us? Who's perpetuating that story in your head? Why aren't we holding ourselves accountable for what we did to our own people? It's crazy. 1859, Rainey traveled to Pennsylvania where he met and married Susan, a free woman of color. I asked you guys a little bit earlier to write down enslaved and freedmen. So under the word enslaved, you can put Mr. Rainey, Joseph's father. You can put Rainey, Joseph Rainey, not Joseph. His name wasn't Joseph. What was Joseph's dead name? My bad, y'all. I forgot that quick. Edward Rainey. Sorry. You can write Edward Rainey under enslaved. Edward Rainey, and then what was her name? Susan Freeman. So you see this interchange between free Negroes and enslaved Negroes. I can all remember I showed you in the Juneteenth letter, Galveston, Texas. I pointed out in that letter that there was a conversation between 3 different groups of people: the plantation owner, the enslaved, and the freedmen. The freedmen later becomes people like W.E.B. Du Bois in the Boule Society. The enslaved Negroes becomes the undergirth society of Negroes, okay? I'm going to be the first one to show y'all the 2 different societies of black people. During and after the time of slavery, there were 2 different groups of black people that existed. We only hear about the group who did wrong and treated wrong and enslaved and beaten and whatever. There was a whole other group of black people who were politicians during this time. Why aren't we holding them motherfuckers accountable? Why is it that Mr. Rainey, the father of Joseph Rainey, who became the 2nd senator of Mississippi, the 1st congressional seat of South Carolina, why is he owning slaves? Why is he allowing that to happen? Y'all think? Why did we see that happening? I'm gonna show you the largest black plantation owner in Louisiana at the time. Why are black politicians allowing other black people to own black people, y'all think? This is 1859, by the way. This is post-Civil War. No, I'm sorry, pre-Civil War. Apologize. Pre-Civil War. And we can say, oh, the Emancipation Proclamation hasn't been issued yet. Even after that shit was issued, slavery went on for another 100 years, actually. It went on for another 100 years. Why didn't black politicians fight to correct this back in the 1800s? That's my question for you guys. Why didn't these black politicians, Mr. Rainey, Hiram Revels, and several others I'm going to show you in a minute, in the South Carolina prostrate states, why didn't any of them fight, pass legislation, law, Why didn't they fight to say, hey, listen? Because they were too busy owning niggas themselves. This was a business. 1861, with the outbreak of the American Civil War, Rainey was among the free black people. Rainey was among the free black people. Rainey was among the free black people. Rainey was among the free black people, not enslaved people, not slavery, because all of you, all of us, all of we were not slaves. Get that out of your freaking mind. Get it out of your head. I know it's hard. It's hard to get the idea that you and your people were picking cotton. Get it out your head, y'all. This is the this is the this is the magic trick they have done to your imagination over a period of time by showing you movies and the idea. And you got other black folks who conspire right along, telling you, we were slaves, and our parents, forefathers were slaves. We built this country, and all that shit. Rainey was among the free black people who conscripted by the Confederacy to work on fortifications in Charleston, South Carolina. He also worked as a cook and laborer on a blockade runner ship. 1862, Rainey and his family escaped to the British Imperial Forces colony of Bermuda, 640 miles off Cape Hatteras in North Carolina. They settled in the town of St. George, Bermuda, from which Charleston and South Carolina had been founded in 1669 under Governor William Slade. There, Rainey worked as a barber. His shop was accessed from Barber's Alley and was located in a cellar of Tucker House, the building on the corner of Water Street and Barber's Alley that had previously been the home of council president and sometimes acting governor Henry Tucker of Bermuda. His wife and the other had become successful dressmaker with their own shop in 1865. This is during the ending of the Civil War. So during slavery, Joseph Rainey and his wife were black entrepreneurs. Before Tulsa, Oklahoma, they were black entrepreneurs. In 65, the couple moved to the town of Hamilton, Bermuda, when the outbreak of yellow fever threatened St. George's. Rainey worked from the Hamilton Hotel as a barber and bartender, where his customers were mostly white. He became a respected member of the community, and he and his wife had earned prosperous living in Bermuda. Bermuda, which had maintained close links with the former colonies of in the South and the United States since the 17th century, profited immensely from the war as a major point from which the British and European manufacturers, weapons, and suppliers were transshipped by the Confederate blockade runners in Charleston and other southern ports in Bermuda seamen like Thomas Leslie Outbridge. A crude block runner smuggling arms to the blockade South. Not all Bermuda supporters of the Confederacy, however, black Bermuda stevedores. Write down the word stevedores. Stevedores was like a merchant seaman. They worked on the docks and the piers. These are black people with professional jobs. You know who else was a stevedore? Timothy Drew. Noble Drew Ali was a stevedore in the Newport News shipyards. Stevedores. Remember that word. Write it down. Learn it. Many other black stevedores, many of them, black Bermuda stevedores brawled with Confederate sailors, and cargoes of Confederate cotton were burned in arsenal on the docks of St. George. Many black and white Bermudans fought for the Union, mostly U.S. Navy. Those who served in the U.S. Army included First Sergeant Robert John Simmons, who was the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Regiment. He died in 1963 as a result of a wound he received in an attack of Fort Wagner in South Carolina. In 1966, 1 year after the Civil War, in 1866, now 66 in my mind, I'm thinking if I didn't read this shit, 1866, Negroes are just coming out of slavery. They can't read or write. They're destined for destitute. They yes, sir, boss, and all that talking like that and shit. They show us in movies. In 1866, that's all we think in our head is happening with black folk, but no, man, this is real history. 1866, following the end of the U.S. Civil War, Rainey and his family returned to South Carolina, where they settled in Charleston. In 1870, 43% of the city's population was African American. 43% of the city, a little under half. And of those folks were all voting people. Watch how he got in office. Pay attention. 43% of the city's population was African American, including many people of color. Dodge the hijack. They said the city's population was African American, including people of color. People of color and African Americans are separated in the sentence. That's why you have to stop at commas, you have to stop at periods. Who were these other people of color? Because they already said African Americans already. So we can assume that everybody that comes after that word is going to be black or Negro. No. You know why? Because in 1866, this is, I think, a couple years after I want to say 69 or 63 was the second time they came up with the U.S. Census. 1779 was the first U.S. Census. I think by this time, the second or third U.S. Census came out. So they was trying to figure out, do we call them Negro? Do we call them colored folk? Do we call them Indians? Do we call them octroons, quadroons? They're still trying to figure it out. So in this paragraph, you would see a separation of two different types of people. In one sense, it'll say the enslaved and freedmen, or enslaved and free people of color. In this sentence, it says the African Americans, including many people of color. What other people of color other than African Americans are you talking about in this sentence? Because we thought it was the same people. No, they're not the same damn people. Moving along. Who, like Rainey, had been free and held skilled jobs before the war. So many African Americans, people of color, like Rainey, had been free already, never was enslaved for nobody's plantation. But they had skilled jobs, they were entrepreneurs. They had skilled jobs before the war. His experience in wealth helped establish him as a leader. He quickly became involved with politics. Joining the executive committee of the state Republican Party in 1868, he was delegated to the Constitution Convention. He was a delegate to the State Constitutional Convention. In 1870, he was elected to South Carolina Senate and became the chair of the Financial Committee. He served only a short time, as that year he won a special election as a Republican to fill in the vacancy of the 41st United States Congress. This vacancy had been created by the House refused to seat Benjamin F. Whitmore. So the House refused to seat this YT, and they wanted to put him in there, Joseph Rainey. He had been censored by the House for corruption, but reelected. Rainey was seated December 12, 1870, and was reelected. That's why I don't know what all this hype around Obama and everybody was about. Like, man, we've been doing this. We've been doing this. People of color, black folk, Negroes, we've been doing it. Before they gave just the supposed right to vote, nigga, we've been voting. We dominated the polls. 43% of the population. 70% of the population, all Negro. The majority of people in the South were Negro voters. It was only a sliver of those who just came out of destitute, who were uneducated, but poorly educated, who could barely read and write because of the polling laws they invoked. Those were the ones who needed the most help voting, because they could not vote because they were mostly of African descent at the time. Not a whole bunch of them, enough of them though, of African descent, and they were not citizens. So they had to have a special modification done to something to have them the right to vote. I'll show you this shit in a second. It's just wild, because black people have been voting. Black folk been had the right to vote because black people were the majority landowners. And the first requirement of voting, you had to be a landowner. And we had a lot of it. Okay? Let's be clear about that. Serving until March 3rd, 1879, he established a record length of service for his black congressmen that were not surpassed until that of William L. Dawson. That was in 43 of Chicago in the 50s. He supported legislation and became known as the He supported legislation that became known as the Enforcement Acts. The Enforcement Acts were three bills that were passed in the United States from 1870 to 71. They were criminal codes that protected African American rights to vote, hold office, and serve in juries and receive equal protection of the law. That's all black folks wanted, was equal protection under the law. We didn't want to integrate. We didn't want to eat their nasty ass food at their counters. We didn't want to watch their boring ass movies. We didn't want to do none of that stuff with them white folks. We just wanted equal protection under the law. Like, stop burning our shit down. Like, stop harassing us. Like, let us live our life. That's all us ever wanted. So he supported legislation that became known as the Enforcement Acts. And the Enforcement Acts were passed between 1870 and 1871 to suppress the violent activity of the KKK. This helped for a time, but white insurgents developed other paramilitary groups in the South, such as the White League and the Red Shirts. Rainey made 3 speeches on the floor of Congress in support of what was finally passed as a Civil Rights Act of 1875. Not 1963, not 1964, not 1960 nothing, Martin Luther King, nobody. It's been going on since 1875 Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act of 1875, sometimes called the Enforcement Act or Force Act, was the United States federal law enacted during the Reconstruction era in response to the civil rights violations against African Americans. The bill was passed by the 43rd United States Congress. Equal protection under the law is all we wanted. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. We're talking about Mr. Rainey. We're talking about Joseph Rainey, son of a slave owner. Son of a slave owner. With the violence against black people increasing in the South in 1874, not 1963, 64, but the dogs and the water hoses, that was light work compared to what was happening in the 1870s and the early 1900s with the race riot acts. Sorry, with the racial acts, racial riots in New York. At the dawn of the Civil War, when black folks weren't even allowed to fight in the Civil War, when those white migrants from New York were being drafted, it's called the draft riots. They just started killing black people for not being able to fight in the war. Like, why y'all don't pick the black people? Why y'all picking us? And the whole shit broke out up in New York. It was called the draft riots. And what happened in the draft riots, the Howard Colored Orphanage was burnt down. And guess what a Howard Colored Orphanage was? It was in Weeksville, New York. Guess who Mr. Mr. Weeks was James Weeks, a black man who bought the entire property, what you guys call Bedford-Stuyvesant today, or Brooklyn. Brooklyn was once an entire thriving black borough before Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the early 1800s, the mid 1800s to late 1800s, Weeksville. Then it became the location for the Howard Colored Orphanage. And the Howard Colored Orphanage later, this is the precursor for Howard University, by the way, they would send these black orphan children when they came of age, 15 to 16, they would ship them off to Hampton, Virginia, to the Hampton Indian Institute. Man, let me keep going. With the violence against black people increasing in the South, 1874, Rainey purchased a summer home in Windsor, Connecticut. As a U.S. representative in South Carolina, Rainey could not use Windsor as his primary residence, but he moved his family there for safety. While visiting, he became an active member of the First Church of Windsor, the Joseph Rainey House, 1830, Greek rival. It's located in 299 Pasadena Avenue and is used as a private residence. It was designed as one of the 130 stops on the Connecticut Freedom Trail, established in 1996 to highlight achievements of African Americans in gaining freedom and civil rights. Joseph Rainey. Joseph Rainey, son of a slave owner, and the slave owner, his dad was black. How? Edward Rainey, slave owner. Joseph Rainey, his son. Pow. How can a slave own a slave? Bow. And it's so much more shit, y'all. Again, if you guys want to copy this outline, we didn't even crack a dent in this outline. I think we were right here. We didn't even get into three. We almost got three. Black politicians, Haim rebels, right there. We was almost about to get into him. Other key black freeborn politician figures: PBS pitchback John Mercer, Langston, former enslaved but crucial Reconstruction politicians, Blank K. Bruce, Big Boy, Robert Smalls. Robert Smalls got a good story too, and Joseph Rainey talked about him already. So there's about five other individuals I didn't get a chance to talk about today. But listen to me. If y'all want this outline, shoot me an email, the MOI podcast gmail.com, subject outline. And as always, show some love by donating right here in the Cash App. Chef J Pondy, I know I'm a chef too in real life, so be cooking up some knowledge for y'all out here in these streets. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, but definitely, man, definitely tap all the way in with me. We'll do a part two, continue with the 2 hour and 30-minute mark. You know, I can go for 6 hours on this shit, but I got some business to handle, man. I appreciate you guys for tapping in so much. Everybody tapping in. Truth be told, appreciate you. So it's nothing but big love for you for tapping all the way in. Again, I always put the link in the comments. Y'all want to join me live, man? Let me know. You know what I'm saying? See, I'm cutting one of my clients right now. He's from Nigeria. He says, well, no, of course we're not African. He knows we're not African. If he's listening, thank you. Thank you. All kin folks, ancient skin folks. Nothing against our African brothers and sisters at all. But instead of looking, and I said this before, instead of looking off the front porch, let's see, what do you call this shit? The indigenous. Give me a second. It's people can't spell. There we go. Let's just go here. Instead of always looking off the front porch, and the front porch of America is the East Coast. They done made you look off the front because that's the last place the British had settled. And the British thought to teach you American history from the front porch, which is the East Coast. They got you looking at Africa and everything over there. Nobody taught you about the back porch, which is California. Look off the back porch. Go to the back door and look out the back door. You're going to see the Polynesian, the Melanesian, the Micronesian. You're going to see, well, not anymore, but Mu, Hawaii. You're going to see all the Pacific Ocean islanders. And those individuals are called the Australoids, not the Africoids. The Africoids are off the East Coast front porch. The Australoids are off the back porch. These are the Aborigine people, not Aboriginal. Don't ever say the word Aboriginal. Aboriginal, according to what's his name? I forgot his name, but he said basically Aboriginal means away from the original. Rest in power. I forgot the brother name. But anyway, look off the back porch of America. If you want to see the connection of the so-called indigenous black folks in North America, look off the back porch. I just showed you proof a minute ago that they were bringing Africans into Mexico by the boatloads. Into Mexico, bringing Africans over there. Moors, they were Moors. I'm going to go on the record and say those were Moors who were bringing other Moors to Central America. In fact, to this day, Mexico's culture is influenced by Moors. So for those who say that the Moors were primarily or mainly in North America, like there is architecture, but there's more Moorish influence in architecture in Mexico than in North America. Then you have to ask yourself if that's why the San Juan Bautista was going to Mexico. The individuals off that ship from San Juan Bautista were Moors. Mexico is influenced by more. Okay, I'm talking too slow. Mexico is influenced by Moorish heritage. Y'all thought Mexico was influenced by Mexicans and Spanish? No. Yes, Mexico is influenced by Moorish heritage through Spanish colonialism. Why would they say Moorish and then say Spanish colonialism? Could it be that the Spaniards were the Moors? Yes. 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 Spanish Empire was the Moorish Empire. Okay? Get over it. It's what it was. Yes, Mexico is influenced by Moorish heritage through Moorish colonization, which meant most evident in the language, what you guys call Latin, architecture, and agriculture. This influence included Arabic words in Spanish, architectural styles like courtyards, tile work, and introduction of central plants and agricultural techniques. Y'all thought Mexico was brought to you by Spanish? Those Spanish people were Moors. Silly Billy gumdrops. Those Moorish slave ships that brought Christopher Columbus over here, those were Moorish slave ships. Nino brothers were a family of experienced sailors of African descent from Spain. Moors. You have to learn to dodge the hijack. These were Moors who brought over Christopher Columbus to their territory, the Moorish Empire. 1492. Pedro Moore. He was piloting the Santa Maria. Juan. He was a master in He was a master and owner of the Nina in Francisco. So Juan, Pedro, and Francisco were three Moorish brothers serving as sailors on the La Nina. Now, it says Juan was the owner of the La Nina. Remember the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria? Those three ships they told you that Columbus came on? They were also involved in Columbus' sequential voyage and later undertook their own expedition to America. Key members, three brothers, were Pedro, Alfonso, Francisco, and Juan. Pedro's son, Bartholomew, also became a sailor, joining them on a later voyage. These were Moorish sailors. The Nino brothers were a family of sailors and conquistadors. Moors were conquistadors. Moors were the sailors that brought those Europeans over here. Mexico was part of the Moorish Empire. Okay? Now, get out your feelings about it. Okay? Now, let's look at something else real quick. Now that we can kind of establish that part, let's see. What was his name? Who was the Moor that helped Cortez? Oh shit. Hernandez. Sorry. Hernandez. My bad, y'all. Moors in early American history, fueled by nationalists and religious fervor, Spain began their conquest into the Americas, bringing Moorish influence into the New World. Although the conquistadors were largely European Spanish Catholics, they brought with them the legacy of the Moorish customs. Moors in early American history. We can go on and on and on and on and on, and it's going to show you how the Moors, the ones who became Moriscos, I'm not talking about the Sephardic Moors, the Juicies who decided to get out of there. The Sephardic Moors, who were Jusies, came over to North America in the colonies. Those were the Sephardic Jews. Sephardic Moorish Jews came to the colonies. Yes, Jews and people of Moorish descent, including those who practiced Judaism in secret, came to the American colonies, particularly in the 1600s and 1700s. They migrated for economic opportunities and escaped persecution, settling in various cities like New Amsterdam or New York, Newport, and Charleston, also in the Spanish and Portuguese colonies throughout America. Let's focus on a second for New York. The Sephardic Jews or Moors settles in New York in the 1600s. Zionist Moorish movement in New York. Woo. There it is. The Zionist Moorish movement in New York primarily refers to the Moorish Zionist temple founded around 1921, Rabbi Herman in Harlem. This group combined Black Israelites' belief supported the state of Zionism, seeing Black Americans as descendants of ancient Israelites who had both ties to biblical modern-day Zion. Other related groups included the Commandment Keepers, founded by Rabbi Wentworth and Arthur Matthew in 1919. There you go. These Moors been over here doing this. All right. Y'all get the point. I'm going to rest my case. I rest my case. Anyway, I'm here to help you guys learn. I don't hurt anybody. Feelings. Hope you guys learned a lot, man. Shouts out to everybody who tapped in today. Be sure to share this, bro. Be sure to share this information, man. I appreciate y'all so much. Truth be told, Rose Reed, who else is in here tapping in with me, man? Everybody, go to the top because y'all been riding with me the whole 2 hours. Appreciate y'all. Solo, Truth King in the building, Supreme Being. Appreciate y'all, man. Appreciate everybody in here. Who is right here? Boom. Appreciate you too. The L's and the Bays, the Wheels and the Ways. Bro, peace to everybody, man. Divine Feminine tapped in with me. A good amount of y'all tapped in today, man. I definitely appreciate y'all today, man. Appreciate y'all so much, man. Be sure to share this shit, man. If you enjoyed what you saw today, hit the Cash App, send everything, man. Happy holidays, happy Turkey Day. Remember, George Washington established Turkey Day for you guys, not the Indians and the Pilgrims. George Washington put it into proclamation. Also, we learned that Negroes were reading and writing during slavery very well, and so well that we became politicians and ran the entire South. I wish I could have went more into that, and I apologize for getting sidetracked with all the other stuff. But if you look up, it's called, and this is only for those y'all who really gonna go research and read it. It's called The Prostrate States. Please go check out this publication, man. It will change your prostrate states of South Carolina. South Carolina. It changed my whole Carol. It changed my whole shit, my whole view, man, of just what we were taught. It's called The Prostrate State of South Carolina, refers to the title of 1874 book, The Prostrate States of South Carolina under Negro Government. Boy, when I tell you we was running it, cuz we was running it. We were not out picking on goddamn cotton. We were not out doing none of that shit. They showed the movie. Make a movie about this. Make a movie about how Negroes were running the South during, before, and after the time of the Civil War, the supposed slavery. Please, I encourage y'all to look this shit up, bro. It's gonna change your whole entire perspective of what was happening during the supposed time of slavery. Negro Rule. The book depicts an amalgam by political corruption, drained by the governmental extravagance, and under the control of a mass Black barbarism. The South's problem, he insisted, arose from Negro government. The solution was to restore leading white political power. This was what Reconstruction was all about. They were not building fucking buildings and railroads. They were reconstructing history, reconstructing the political social format, because Negroes were running shit, and no white folk didn't have enough votes to change anything. They couldn't do shit with it. Delbert Blair, thank you. Dr. Delbert Blair, rest in power, Delbert Blair. Delbert Blair said, yeah, thank you. Dr. Delbert Blair said, don't confuse Aborigine with Aboriginal. Thank you. Rest in power, Dr. David Blair. Go check out this book, man. James S. Pike. Man, black folks were run. It's mind blowing, and the only reason it was mind blowing for me, family, was because we were taught that we couldn't read or write back then. We were, picking cotton and stuff like that. We didn't know anything. You know what I'm saying? Even by telling us that it was illegal for black folks to read back then under what was called the anti-literacy laws, anti-literacy acts, whatever the case is, we were still able to do amazing things. And we know that we all were not under slavery either. Like the amount of people who were free and the amount of people who people were not free too, sequentially, but it just makes you think. That's all. That's all I'm really trying to say. Like, it just makes you think a little bit. And this is chapter 1 of the book. You can go online and check it out. I think you gotta, subscribe to one of the libraries, but you can check it out. A Black Parliament: Humiliation of White Society, bottom side of an extraordinary speculative. Columbia, the capital of South Carolina, is charmingly situated in the heart of upland near the geographical center of the state. Has a broad open streets regularly laid out. The opportunity for rides and drives can hardly be surpassed. There are good animals and good turnouts in the streets. They give you the whole situation. But now there is no frost and recollection and dispelled by the general spring weather. It's a good read, man. I mean, it's way more than this right here that I'm showing y'all now, but trust me on it. It's a good read. It's a good read. The Prostrate States Negro Rule of the South. Until next time, fam. Thank y'all for tapping in with me, man. I appreciate y'all. Peace and love.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man?
Oh.